He has a secret. He can deal huge damage to a monster with just one hit. A powerful weapon. A grimoire with unbalanced magic written in it. Various accessories that increase bonuses during travel. All this is a reward that can only be obtained after defeating the boss. It is also called a reward for the first completion of the dungeon. Only she gets it in unlimited quantities. Nampri Dungeon. Recommended level 80. The man shouts loudly for his subordinate to work as fast as possible, to which the boy runs faster. The poor boy was driven on the most stupid errands to humiliate him and show his greatness. The adult-looking guy smiles slyly and offers the little boy to distract the monster, and the smile definitely did not mean anything good. It was an ominous smile that frightened everyone around. Anri Myth answered positively with determination in his voice. He definitely wanted to work here. From his appearance, one could tell that he really needed the money. Walking forward with a huge backpack, he hears shouts behind him that it was time to use his useless ability. They definitely hated this boy. The boy falls, his useless skill. The boys behind saw the monster and reported it with a sarcastic voice. They enjoyed the picture before their eyes. They liked to watch the little boy suffer. Anri's skill is Evasion. The boy with panic on his face tries to evade the monster while shouting the name of his skill, his face expressing wild fear and panic. The evasion skill was activated, which was immediately reported by the system. No matter how hard the monster tried, he couldn't hit the boy, because the blow went through him. The blows went right through him, not allowing him to even slightly touch the boy or even injure him. Evasion is a skill that allows you to dodge enemy attacks. But just dodge. Anri ran from the monster wherever he could, hiding in any corner. The man who sent him on this mission laughed loudly. The whole team laughed loudly, looking at the boy who was running away from the monster as best he could. This is a useless skill that is simply impossible to fight with. But Anri got it. The men, laughing loudly, shouted at him to go away. The boy had no choice but to silently agree and get out of their way. He had no right to refuse them after all. They were paying him. Proudly displaying his figure, one of the team is ready to attack, instantly removing the monster from the way. The latter was already lying on the ground. Anri watched this whole picture with admiration. He could only dream of such adventures as the great team had, because he was too weak and did not have the necessary skills. The man rushed forward with a bright smile, throwing out phrases that the monsters were very far from him. His arrogant behavior betrayed his wild confidence in himself, in his strength and abilities. The monsters flew away from the team with incredible speed. They fought proudly, not allowing a single monster to even get close to them once again. Anri opened his mouth and eyes wide, admiring the picture before his eyes. He was always amazed by such battles of heroes. He himself dreamed of great feats, dreamed of traveling, being such a great hero and saving people's lives. The team returned to the city victorious, showing themselves as winners and their big haul in the form of a huge pile of money. The whole city brightly welcomed their heroes, rejoicing at their victory. One guy rudely threw a small amount of money in the boy's face, saying that it was his share. They greatly neglected the boy's abilities. He was absolutely useless to them, and even a burden. Anri ran into the bushes to look for the rest of the coins while the team laughed loudly at him. But Anri didn't care. He really needed this money. Every coin was valuable to him. The boy dreamed of a skill that would allow him to fight, travel, be a hero and save lives, so that the public would also greet him, rejoicing at his victories over monsters. Picking up the coin and looking at it in the bright sun, he understands that he could have earned a lot more coins then. He could have lived in better conditions than now. Everything could have been different. He has a younger sister to look after. With a bright smile on his face, he walked into the room, showing a small jar in his hands. Entering the room where his sister lay, he turned to Ellery. He was glad to see her. Even unconscious, he cherished her terribly and always talked, believing that she definitely heard him. While preparing a basin of water, she was going to look after her sister. This was already a daily routine. It had not bothered or worried him for a long time. Her sister needed to wash. It would be better for her health. Anri began to tell his sister that he had been able to play a big role today to get the treasure. He always did this. Every day he hoped that his little sister would hear him and rejoice in his little achievements with him. The boy admitted that although his team was rude, they allowed him to stay with them. It was important for him now because he really needed money to treat the most precious person in his life. Having finished caring for his sister, He noticed that she was now completely clean. Even though she always lay on the bed, he treasured her. Picking up a small jar of medicine, he prepares to use it. It's time to take a new dose to get well as soon as possible. Bringing the medicine to his sister's face, he carefully helped her drink it, saying that the medicine was very expensive, and so that Alaret would not spill it. Every drop was important, not only for the money, but also for her health. He looked tenderly at his sister, hoping only for the best. He believed that one day a miracle would happen and Alaret would again be able to get out of bed and smile as she always did. He recalled a short dialogue with the doctor, how she addressed him. The woman with a stern look told him that he had to give her the medicine every day or Alaret would die, which no one wanted to see. The girl was very valuable to the boy. Henri's eyes widened, and he said that the medicine was very expensive, to which the woman replied that if he did as she said, Alaret's death could be significantly delayed, which could help her recover a little, delaying the inevitable as long as possible. To which the guy said that his sister should not worry, he would get the money even as much as the medicine cost. It was not important now. The priority was the health of his beloved sister. With confidence in his voice, he promised that he would definitely get the money. He knew that it would be hard, he knew that he could ruin his health, but he didn't care. The most important thing was his sister's health. You can never earn that much at a regular job. Henri will have to work for Guillermo, no matter how difficult it is, no matter how terrible and painful it is. He needs money now, in any way. But there is one nuance that did not help at all to cope with this whole difficult situation. The man said that they no longer needed the boy. Just like that, he took it and threw it out of the team, and he didn't care that Henri really needed money, that he had a sick sister and he needed to work. Henri fell to the floor, asking how this happened, to which the man looked at him like he was trash. He smiled his evil smile, showing all his attitude towards Henri. Reminding the boy of his wounded hand, he asked how the boy would work as a porter now. He was absolutely useless now. There would be no use for him while he was wounded. This time, the luggage was heavier than usual, and he was unable to avoid the attack. Henri tried to justify himself by saying that despite all this, he was able to carry everything safely. All he got in response was a hard punch. Henri was a small boy, and the blow sent him flying to the other end of the room. He collected almost all the furniture behind him as he flew. The man smiled and said that he wasn't going to repeat it twice. He was already tired of hanging around with the boy. He was absolutely useless and weak. Now he didn't need him anymore. The boy sat on the floor with a sad look and a piece of meat on his head. Suddenly, Henri started shouting to be taken to another team. He introduced himself as Henri Crete and said he was 13 years old. The boy was kneeling and asking to be taken as a porter. The guy opposite pointed to his eye and asked if everything was okay with the boy, to which Henri replied that such a trifle would not stop him. Bowing to the floor, he begged to be accepted, to which the guy thought about it. Guillermo frowned, which alerted the potential hero, Henri. The knight turned to the boy, asking if he remembered what his name was. Suddenly, everyone in the tavern shouted at once, "Prisoner of the first level." The men around him reminded the boy how useless he was, that no one would want to take him on the team because he did almost no damage and would be of no use. Guillermo asked loudly, who would want to take the boy into their team? Henri was thrown out of the tavern roughly onto the ground and ordered never to appear there again. The man smiled and said that he wouldn't be surprised if he found the boy dead in a ditch somewhere. No one would take Henri in because everyone was afraid of Guillermo. Henri wondered what he should do alone. If he doesn't make money, then Alaret. Remembering his sister and her situation, his eyes widened. Slowly rising from the ground, trying not to make his sore arm worse, he knew that you never give up. Standing somewhere in an alley, he looked at his hand. Looking at the coins in his hand, he realized that this was not enough for the medicine. He had already pawned everything he could, even his father's memorable gift. There was nothing left in the house. Henri didn't understand what he should do now. Gathering his will into a fist, he realized that he would have to go to the dungeon alone. He quickly moved his hand. Grabbing a small sword, he decided to check his status. The boy wondered what options he had now. After all, he was just an ordinary adventurer. He could kill the monster and sell the drop. But he can't do it alone. Henri can't even defeat slime. The boy looked closely at his status until an idea popped into his head. If he has any chance, that's only deep in the forest. In the dungeon for beginning adventurers, the Facile dungeon, Walking through the long corridors of the dungeons, Henri was amazed by the size and eerie atmosphere of the place. A kobold caught his eye, to which the boy opened his eyes wide. Hiding around the corner, Henri realized that the recommended traveler level here was 4 twit. He wondered what he should do with the first level. Taking a small sword in his hands, he prayed for his father's help. Henri asked himself, make money in the dungeon? Kobold noticed the guy who suddenly appeared in front of him and exposed his fangs to attack. The boy understands that all he can. This is to run and dodge, which he successfully did with the monster. Running around the corner, he sat on the ground, breathing heavily, trying to figure out if it had worked. After a couple of minutes, he realized that everything had worked out well. As he walked forward, he searched for treasure, which he did successfully, finding a small chest. He came closer, slowly opening the chest. There was a small plant inside, and Henri was only happy because he was able to find an antidote. After doing the calculations, he realized that he could sell it for 5 Ls and became even happier. He understood that this was far from enough. He still had 4956 Ls left to collect. Henri was glad that he could now earn money too. Running away from several more monsters, he was glad that he could deftly escape from their attacks. His eyes lit up with determination to raise money for his sister's medicine. Finding another chest, he crouched down in front of it, wondering what could be in it. Carefully opening the lid, the guy found only emptiness. And so it was throughout the entire journey, no matter how many times he opened them, all the chests were empty. Approaching the new chest, Henri folded his hands in a prayerful gesture, asking that at least there would be something in it. But again I found only emptiness. Running along the corridors, the boy wondered if it was really all cleaned up by those who had been here before him. Breathing heavily, the boy moved forward. When he reached the huge door, he realized that he had searched everything so thoroughly that he was able to reach the boss's room. Opening the map, Henri realizes that he cannot return empty-handed. Looking at the parchment in his hands, he realized that he had not yet looked here. The boss room is located in the very depths of the dungeon, and behind it there is another one, which can only be entered by those who have defeated the boss. The reward area, Henri is fired up by the idea that there must be a chest there 100%. For completing the dungeon, they give very cool rewards, which the boy can sell for a lot of money. Henri understands that if he wants to buy the necessary medicine for his sister, he has no other choice. Suddenly, a loud howl of a kobold was heard nearby. Henri quietly said that he had no time for kobolds at all. Another monster appeared from the darkness, and Henri tensed. Suddenly, several more appeared, and the boy began to tremble. Several dozen kobolds suddenly emerged from the darkness of the corridor, ready to attack the little boy, and Henri was overcome with intense panic. Waving his arms, he tried to talk to the monsters, asking them to stop, because he had a sick sister at home. He clarified that she was too good even for him. He remembers how he carefully fed her and apologized for giving her the same thing, to which the girl smiled and replied that she liked everything. Henri put his hands in front of him, unable to think straight due to panic, and suggests that the monsters have a picnic before they eat him. He wants to leave it until his sister gets better. The kobolds didn't listen to him and moved forward to attack the boy. Henri wasn't surprised by the animals' reaction. He begged the animals to stop while he used his dodge skill. The boy leaned his back against the door, remembering that dodging was a skill, which would work flawlessly if there was a boss room behind him. He slowly broke through the door behind. With a loud cry that he was ready to die, he slowly walked away from the dogs to the other side of the door. Suddenly, he fell to the ground. He looked at the huge door in front of him. He realized that he was inside the room. Turning around, Henri came across another monster, which surprised him greatly. Kobold was taller than the other monsters and slowly said that if you go into the boss room, you won't be able to leave until you kill its owner. It turned out to be a werewolf, recommended level 8. The number of members of the group, 6 people. Henri tried to tightly squeeze a small knife in his hands, realizing that the boss was in front of him. He doesn't even have a chance to win. The monster will simply tear him to shreds. He tried to convince himself that he would survive. He didn't care that he was alone. He didn't care that he was level 1. None of it mattered to him. He will definitely return alive. His plan started with evasion, which he did successfully, dodging the monster's attack. Looking at his strength, Henri realized that any attack from the werewolf, it will be his last. The boy's attention was drawn to the fact that the monster was going to attack with 2 paws. He tried to dodge as quickly as possible using his magic skill. Henri dodged the attack again and gripped the knife tighter. The main thing for him is not to set him up if he is not repaired. The werewolf turned around abruptly. He pointed his huge paw while Henri was flying in his thoughts of survival. The monster's huge paw was heading towards the guy, threatening to destroy him with one blow, like a small fly. Ani didn't lose his composure and used his dodge skill again. He was able to escape the werewolf's powerful blow. A massive strike without preparation, it was close. But the boy fearlessly shouted that he had the skill of dodging and he could see every attack of the monster. The boy began to understand his movements. When he swings, when he stretches out both paws, before a massive blow, and if he stands on his front paws, Henri has come up with a tactic for each of his attacks. Leaving his thoughts behind, the boy remembered that he needed to concentrate. The monster suddenly stretched out both paws at once. This means you need to use dodge to get out of the affected area. Although the monster does not always attack with both paws during a mass attack, in this case, you just need to gain additional distance. The werewolf stood on his front paws, which means he needs to use dodge immediately. Henri understands that as long as he concentrates, the monster won't be able to get him. Suddenly his chance comes. The boy runs forward trying to attack because now the monster cannot use his attacks. He promises to return alive. Home, where Rarest is waiting for him. He stabbed the werewolf in the back with a knife, but he didn't even feel it. Henri looked at the monster with hope, asking, did it really not hurt at all? The boy began to swing the knife faster, shouting for the monster to pierce him, to remove at least 1 unit of health. With tears in his eyes, the guy can only dream of dealing even 1 point of damage. He shouts that he would cut the werewolf with this very knife until he defeated him. The werewolf suddenly grabbed the boy by the head, lifting him off the ground. Henri realized that with 0 damage, he had no chance from the start. He cursed loudly, realizing that he wouldn't be able to get out now. The boy screams that he can predict every attack of the monster, can dodge each of them. But no matter how hard he tries, he can't win. Henri began to loudly apologize to his sister, apologizing for his weakness while Sony shook his huge paw. For him, dodging is the most useless skill. The werewolf abruptly threw the guy out of his strong grip. The knife broke into several pieces. Henri was glad that it was able to stay with him until the very end. He remembered that his father also died in the dungeon and wondered how it was. Remembering the sweet image of his sister, he apologized to her a huge number of times. How he wished he could hear her sweet voice again. Suddenly, in his head, Ellerith called out to him loudly with some hope in her voice. Henri's eyes widened, surprised that he had heard her at all, and he turned around to see that he was flying into some kind of wall. He tried to close himself off from the wall to at least slightly protect himself from the inevitable blow. If he crashes into that wall, he's finished. He definitely doesn't want that fate. But all he can do is use his dodge skill. And suddenly, his body slowly began to pass through the wall. Without opening his eyes, he was able to pass through the wall using his skill. He fell to the ground without feeling the wall he was supposed to hit. Raising his head, he did not immediately understand what had happened. For a moment it seemed to him that he had already crashed into the wall. He turned his gaze to the side to look around the room. In front of him, he saw a huge chest. He couldn't believe his eyes. Approaching him, the guy discovered the traveler's sword, a huge sword shining in the darkness of the cave. The reward for completing the Familia dungeon, Ani had already calculated how much he could earn on this sword. He realized that it really was that same room, the reward area. But he still understood that he had not defeated the boss. Coming closer to the wall, he began to carefully feel it to find something. He wondered how he was able to pass through the wall. Holding the sword in his hand, he tried to understand how all this happened. Until now, he was bullied so much just because of him. The man from the previous team smiled brightly and shouted that the boy's gift was completely useless. And yet, Henri was able to receive a reward for completing the quest. Maybe it's not such a bad skill after all. Henri smiles brightly when he realizes that he can return home alive. City of Adventurers Garibos. The large number of dungeons in the area attracts wild crowds here. This is a city of adventurers. Power and money decide everything here. Business in this world revolves around adventurers. The man raised Henri, asking if he had money or was he just a common thief. To which the boy waved his hands, saying that the man was wrong. He pulls out a sword and says that he would very much like to sell it. The man carefully took the sword in his hands and began to examine it more closely. Henri realized that if he couldn't sell the sword for a decent amount, then he wouldn't be able to save his sister. He prayed that the sword would be worth at least 5K. The man behind the counter offered the boy 30K. The boy's eyes lit up when he heard such a large number because he would be able to buy enough medicine to last for almost a week. He ran home laughing loudly. He was in a hurry to run to his sister as quickly as possible. He suddenly entered the room shouting that he had brought medicine to Elaret. He sadly realized that if he didn't give her medicine at least once a day, then she will die. Henri smiled. He was glad that he was able to run to her in time. He carefully laid his head on the bed, starting to tell his sister that he had been able to get the medicine on his own when he first joined Guillermo's group. He remembered how Alareth had held Kay tenderly to her chest, praising and supporting him, and he wondered how often she had been there. But he is not the same as before. Today he goes to Facil's dungeon again. Yesterday he managed to slip into the reward area without defeating the boss by using dodge. If he learns to use it freely, he will surely be able to buy medicine every day, with determination in his voice. The boy is ready to go forward. Henri approached the wall again and decided to try to pass through it to check. He used the skill but couldn't pass through the wall. Henri tried a few more times, but he didn't even come close to yesterday's result. He suddenly remembered that the werewolf had thrown him out, and the boy, unconscious, had flown into that very wall. Needs momentum. He walked through that wall yesterday because he was thrown into it if he can just simulate that force. He ran towards the wall with all his might, hoping that it would work and use the dodge skill. But the wall pushed him away and the guy rolled back. The tactic didn't work. Suddenly, two men approached him. They did not understand what the boy was doing there and came up to ask what he was doing there. They started laughing with Henri and added that the boy wouldn't be able to level up if he banged his head against the wall. But the boy didn't care. He had a question about getting to the other side of the wall. He wondered what he should do. Henri really couldn't understand. Walls can't even activate skills. The boy says that of course he knew that dodging only works when he's being attacked by enemies. But how did he manage to do it last time? He looked sadly at the wall, not understanding what he should do now. There was nothing left for him to do but repeat all of yesterday's conditions. Suddenly the guy realized that he might not succeed, and then he would definitely die. But the werewolf had already noticed him. It was too late to retreat. Clutching the knife, Henri realizes that this is his only chance and he certainly isn't going to let it slip away. He was lucky because he remembers perfectly well how exactly he dodged yesterday. And if he attacks again when the monster opens up, the monster grabbed his head again just like last time. The boy realized that it was time to act. If he accepted this attack, he would fly into the wall just like yesterday. And so it happened. The monster threw the guy back with great force. As he flew into the wall, he understood that if this didn't work, he was being led into the wall and wouldn't get off that easy. He prayed that it would all work out. He closed his eyes tightly and used the evasion skill. Henri was able to fly through the wall. He did it. The boy was very happy that he had completed this task, which meant that in order for the dodge to be activated, he had to fly into the wall from someone's attack. The happy guy ran to the chest, realizing that now he could collect rewards without killing the boss. But even in this situation, there are disadvantages. The man from the guild explained to the boy that such a reward could only be received once. Then no matter how many times you defeat the boss, the reward will never be as valuable as the very first time. So the sword of the traveler, it's worth so much. Henri slowly opened the chest, no longer hoping to find something as valuable as the previous sword. But in the chest, he again saw his companion's sword, which surprised him greatly. Henri brought it back for sale and again received 30K. The boy couldn't find an answer to the man's statement. He was afraid that the seller might suspect him of something. He said in a trembling voice that it was truly a miracle that he had come across the traveler's sword again. The seller was silent for a while, thinking about his answer. The man just smiled and said that it meant there was a small chance of getting a second one, that it happens. He patted the boy on the shoulder, saying that he loved people who sold him interesting things. Henri was surprised and wondered if he was dreaming all this. Talking to his sister, he put all his earnings on the bed, asking what they should do now. After all, he now has a huge amount of money. The boy began to slowly count what he had earned. The sum was enormous. He counted 41,500 elas. Henri was happy. He wanted to count it again because never in his life had he had so much money. But now he could take good care of his sister. For a second, he imagined what he could spend that kind of money on, for example, on food. But he abruptly rejected all his thoughts, realizing that he would spend them only on his sister. He began to carefully wash his sister, saying that he would spend money on all his dreams only after she recovered. Until then, all the money would go towards the medicine. Henri was still surprised that he was able to earn 30K again. And all this, even though he didn't even defeat the boss. The boy rolled the coin, saying that next time he definitely wouldn't be so lucky. But he was lucky the third time, and then to the fourth. Opening the chest, he found the traveler's sword again. But I understand that at this rate, he will be able to get rich. Henri wondered if this was all because he didn't kill the boss. If this is really true, will the boy continue to receive the traveler's sword? This world is full of all sorts of dungeons, and each of them has its own reward for completing, and in some, it's very valuable, and Henri can get all of this without limitation without killing the boss. He could not have imagined that Evasion contained such possibilities. The boy hadn't felt this good in a long time. Henri thought, what if one of the rewards could include medicine for his sister? Abruptly, he stopped and thought that it was too suspicious to sell a sword in the same place. He shook his head, looking for a dream where he could sell it, when suddenly someone called out to him. A familiar voice said that he had heard about the sales the guy had been doing lately. Henri recognized that voice out of 1,000. Guillermo smiled and said that stealing is not really very good. The boy tensed up and asked what they meant by that. A huge crowd of people gathered in a circle, looking at something and discussing it very heatedly. The mysterious girl became interested in this crowd. Henri lay on the ground, beaten, tired, and weak. He didn't understand why he was beaten up at all. The people around him didn't understand where the guards were now. Guillermo smiled and held the sword that Henri once had and said that the boy was a real thief. He believed that he got the traveler's sword himself. Putting down his sword, he added that he did not know about such talents of the boy. Ani doesn't understand why he can't find the strength to shout out that he didn't do it. Guillermo himself smiled wider and said that now the guy would bring him everything he stole. Henri was afraid that he could not answer him. The man clenched his fist and said that the boy should have answered yes and prepared to hit. Suddenly the guards appeared and loudly asked what was going on here. The man was addressed loudly, getting his attention. The guy with the Iraqs approached one of them and reminded them that Guillermo was one of the big three. He handed the bag of gold into his hands so that the soldiers would remain silent about what they had just seen. Henri remembered that in this world money decides everything. Suddenly, the girl said that Guillermo had too provocative a smile. Suddenly, lightning appeared out of nowhere and struck the man directly without injuring the boy. Guillermo wondered what the hell this was and why he couldn't move. His entire team was under the spell. A girl from the team noticed that it was a ruby staff, a gun that only drops in A-ranked dungeons with a chance of 1 in 1929 and only one person has it. At the sorceress Garabos, Oria Schmick. Taking the sword from the man, she sarcastically said that she would return it. Guillermo shouted that it was his sword, but the girl noticed that the sword belonged to the boy and came closer to him. Abruptly, Oria let them go, telling him to leave as quickly as possible. The man was clearly unhappy that he was rebuffed and that his sword was also taken away. The man left, saying that he would still remember this to Henri, and the boy himself was very surprised that his offender was rebuffed. He was very surprised, looking at the girl. She was a little older than him. She looked majestic, but at the same time, suddenly she turned her gaze to the guy and smiled. She handed the sword to the boy, returning it. She abruptly took the sword back, causing the boy to look at her strangely. The girl smiled and said that since she helped, she could take the sword for herself. Henri was very surprised by this statement. Oria asked, "Isn't that so?" To which the boy sadly looked down. Getting closer to his face, she told the guy to just ask for it back. She waited for him to start, that it was his sword, and she returned it. Henri hesitantly and quickly told the girl to return the sword. Oria handed the sword back to him. Henri fell to his knees and began to bow to the girl, thanking her for saving him. He explained that if it weren't for her, he wouldn't have been able to buy medicine for his sister. The girl replied that she thought that all people thought about themselves. As it turns out, there are people like Henri. Turning around, the girl smiled again and asked if the guy would like to take up self-defense so that he could be able to protect his sister. When the boy came home, he began to think. He always thought that he could protect his sister with the money he earned. But as it turned out, this is not enough. No matter how many awards he receives, everything can simply be taken away from him, as they did today. Now that he knows how to go through the wall, I can't silently give away what belongs to him, and he certainly won't be able to protect his sister. He must become stronger by using evasion. The boy was about to move on to the E-rank dungeon, the Spiral Dungeon. The reward for the first completion is the Book of Truths. Cries for help were heard from the depths of the dungeon. A warrior wondered how this could happen since they had spent so much money on equipment. He screamed loudly, but he didn't want to die here. The scream repeated over and over again, echoing off the cold walls of the dungeon. E-rank, Spiral Dungeon, Dark Orc Boss, recommended level 25. There is no doubt about it, and only Henri knows about it. In order for the dodge to be activated, he needs to take the attack that threw him into the wall. What the boy needs now for the battle is not a weapon, but a shield. He asked the seller for a shield. The man led the boy into a room where there was a huge selection of various shields. He looked at the shields. One cost 3K. That's how much he spent on food per month. The other 5K. That's how much he spent on medicine. Once he couldn't even dream of spending such amounts of money. Now he can buy something so expensive. The man came closer and asked which dungeon the boy was heading to which Henri smiled and replied that he would go to the Spiral Dungeon. The seller suddenly frowned and was very surprised because this was an E-rank dungeon. He approached the boy and asked if he was in his right mind. It wouldn't hurt that such a little one had already risen to such a high rank. The man also asked if the guy was going for the book and for the rewards for completing the dungeon, because it's a divine item that every adventurer dreams of. Henri only frowned, which made the seller realize that he had not yet made up his mind. He thought about it and taking the shield for 3K, he said that this nonsense definitely doesn't suit him, and he squeezed the shield in half. He offered the boy a small golem shield and explained it had 10K durability. The man continued explaining that even a simple bad, a dark orcs, is quite weighty. God knows how many times he saw people lay down swords and pikes, but in the end, they fled or died due to weak protection. He also added that this shield is not expensive, but at the same time it is of first-class quality. The price tag was 120,000, but the man smiled and replied that he would give the boy a huge discount. Henri was surprised, realizing that he could live forever on this money. Usually, it's not done like that. The boy was able to reach the Spiral Dungeon. Henri carefully made his way into the boss's room. He watched the scene as a huge orc finished off a man, opening his head and turning his sour body to the side, like extra bones, a huge mouth from which drool flowed, inspiring fear with its very appearance. With his huge paw, he took hold of the mace, preparing to attack. He suddenly raised his weapon and screamed loudly, showing that he was ready to destroy anyone he saw now. The recommended level to defeat the orc is 25. Henri smiled nervously because he had finally decided to buy this small golem shield. But usually it doesn't suit him. He's only level 1, and his stats are too low. Even if he bought himself a weapon normally, he still wouldn't be able to defeat the boss. Then he can only focus on one thing because now his life depends on the shield. The orc suddenly approached and attacked, attempting to destroy his enemy immediately. Henri hid behind the shield, but the momentum from the blow was too strong. With the shield held up, and the boy realized that the seller really hadn't lied. The dark orc's attacks are something else. Henri appeared in front of him and used his evasion skill. He can get to the reward without killing her. Having flown over the wall, the boy was surprised that he could do it even with a shield. He raised his shield into the air to check for any injuries, but it was completely intact without even a single scratch. Henri was surprised that even after such a blow, the shield remained standing and did not even give a hint that it wanted to break. He ran around the entire room, very happy that the shield was completely intact and he wouldn't have to buy a new one several times. Hugging the shield, the boy smiled, saying that he would definitely succeed. Henri raised his shield again, saying that now he was his best ally for a long time. As he walked towards the chest, the boy spoke to the shield, saying that with its help he was able to get here and see this chest. The chest opened and that very Book of Truths appeared from there. Oria told him that he had to become stronger if he wanted to protect his sister. He clicked the use button on the screen that appeared. This is the only way for him to understand the stats, since he can't level up. If he uses it, that will be able to increase its highest score by 10 points. Also, only he can use this book an infinite number of times. Henri used his dodge skill again and was able to fly through the wall. He received the second Book of Truths. It really works. By going through the wall, he can get as much reward as he wants. When he got home, he used the book again, showing his sister all the magic of the book. Dexterity was a value of 10, showing his statuses to his sister, saying that for the first time in his life he increased his agility status by 10. Running around the room, he thought that he had already become much faster, and he finishes washing his sister earlier than usual. He promises that with endless rewards, he will be able to become stronger for his sister. The boy sat down on the floor to clean his shield. He wondered how much he needed to increase his agility to become stronger. Only Henri knows how to pass through the wall if he can get the Book of Truths in unlimited quantities. Then there are no limits to increasing his agility. When he was in Guillermo's group, he saw his numbers. The man's dexterity at that time was 243. Remembering such a large number, the boy decided everything for himself. If Guillermo's dexterity is 243, then Henri will definitely become stronger. Coming back to the organ, he promised that at least in dexterity he would become better than a man. He set himself the goal of gaining more than 1,000 dexterity. Raising his shield, he was going to go only forward. He used his wonderful dodge skill again, and the boy flew into the wall. Time after time, he increased his agility by 10. Having already used 6 books of truth, his dexterity was already 210. But Henri needed much more, so he went to use the evasion skill again. The boy collected the magical book 8 more times to increase his dexterity. The number of truth books used was 14. The dexterity was 290, but Henri needed more. His numbers were growing, only getting bigger with every book he picked up. He wasn't going to stop. This was just the beginning of his genius plan to protect his sister. He fell to the floor, smiling and glowing with happiness. He specially saved up 10 books to increase the skill by 100 at once. For him, it is a very pleasant feeling. The books used are 24. Today, his agility is 390, and his soul is warmed at the end of the day when he looks at his increased stats. He could look at them forever. But he only sat like that until the morning. Day after day, he received as many books of truth as possible. Fatigue was accumulating, but Henri definitely wasn't going to stop and used his dodging skill again. He had already promised himself to become stronger and had collected the book a huge number of times again. He thought it was a lot of fun to collect books again and again, a huge number of times. He had never had so much fun in his life. Again and again he collected books. This is already the 100th book, although you won't tell anyone about it. However, when no one notices the boy, although no, he even likes it because if passers-by found out about the passage through the wall, they would already start using it to endlessly collect rewards. As long as he can protect his little sister, he has nothing else to wish for. She taught him this. As soon as he remembered the girl, he immediately saw her and called out loudly. Oria smiled. For her, the first-level prisoner and the sorceress Garabosa were 2 completely different worlds. The girl recognized him. But now he didn't look much better, and she was afraid that she was mistaken. She came closer and said that the boy looked fine. Oria asked if he had really leveled up. Henri was embarrassed. He couldn't say anything about his ability. She used special vision to see the guy's statuses. But he dug through himself with his hands, asking her not to do it. But Oria was too interested. She was able to see the guy's dexterity, which was 1150, and was very surprised by it. Henri smiled and said that he decided to become stronger only because of her. He thanked the girl, to which Oria smiled tenderly. The girl turned around elegantly. She needed to go clean the dungeon and she would have to leave the boy. For Henri, any task with the dungeon sounded super interesting. He waved back at the girl, shouting, "Good luck." Oria smiled kindly, saying that they would see each other again. That day, Oria never returned from the dungeon. Since Oria did not return from the dungeon, the man standing behind the counter folded his arms across his chest and told her that the girl had most likely gone to the A-rank dungeon, the Trump dungeon. He suggested that the rescue team was now in a very difficult situation. Henri didn't like this. He shouted that a week had already passed. The man replied that this was normal because the recommended level for this dungeon was 50. The boy was very surprised by this. The seller added that everything inside is filled with traps, so it is not the easiest task and all they can do is wait. The boy couldn't stand it and shouted after the seller that he was leaving and ran away. The man was very surprised. He wondered if the boy could handle it. Suddenly, a buyer approached him. The guy looked after the boy and asked if he was a first-level prisoner. The seller didn't immediately understand what the buyer was talking about, but he smiled and reminded him that the man didn't do anything other than his forge. The guy explained that the boy is called that because he cannot raise his level above the first, so he is called the first-level prisoner. The man got angry and broke the sword that they had just wanted to buy. He understands that if everything said is true, Henry ran to Tram's dungeon. Knights were already fighting inside, shouting that a golem had appeared before them. The recommended level for the dungeon is 50. The men were declaring that if things continued like this, they would have to retreat, while the boy ran up to them from behind as quickly as possible. The seller was thinking that Henri was immortal since he went to a dungeon where level 50 is recommended when he was the first. Henri, however, ran forward fearlessly, using his skill to run past all the enemies. The knights did not immediately understand what had happened and what ran past them. It was Henri. With the help of books, he increased his agility to 1150. He has absolutely no time to fight monsters now, so he just runs away, until he gets to Oria. Unlike the previous ones, it's much more difficult to move around in this dungeon. There are moving traps here. These are traps of D-rank dungeons. If you step on it, then the person will be thrown to a random place in the dungeon. Suddenly, the boy was moved by one of these. Henri looked around, trying to understand where he was now. This is another reason why Oria's rescue was taking so long. Throwing away the parchment, he realized that if he kept falling into such traps, then the map would be useless. Henri can only keep running until he gets to her, no matter how many times he is teleported. He's not going to stop, otherwise why did he pump up his agility? Precisely to protect the people dear to him. After all, he can do it now. Suddenly, the boy fell to the ground, right at the feet of Oria, who was sitting with her legs tucked up and dreaming of delicious food. Hearing the crash, she raised her head to see what the sound was. Henri also raised his head from the ground and smiled brightly at the girl. He was glad that he was able to find her at all. Oria got up from the ground and walked up to the boy, asking what he was even doing here. With a bright smile, he answered the boy that he had come to save her, which greatly surprised the girl. Oria smiled and said that her research was just delayed and it didn't mean that she should run to save her. Suddenly, she heard the boy crying. The girl cleared her throat and apologized. Because such a sad Henri hurt her heart, he tried. So she can't just push him away. Suddenly, the boy remembered something. He carefully pulled a bun for Oria, because recently her stomach had been gurgling from hunger. The girl smiled at such concern and replied that she was satisfied with such food. Sitting in the dungeon, the couple decided to make a fire. Oria explained that on this expedition, they had to find every trap, which was why their mate was so confused. She asked if the boy knew the meaning of the number 82, to which he received a negative answer. The girl's voice became lower. She explained that this was the number of adventurers who had disappeared here and their number was growing every day. The recommended level to complete is 50, but only recently, 27 adventurers of level 60, 46 of level 50, and 9 adventurers of level 70 have disappeared. Oria asked, "Doesn't it seem strange?" The girl added that a strange rumor began to circulate about this dungeon. There is a hidden room with a boss. One of the moving traps is connected to this room, and whoever gets thrown there. Henri continued for her, saying that the man would die. There was silence between them. Oria lowered her head, saying that she was here to find this room. Kill the boss and report. Abruptly, Henri grabbed the girl by the hand, offering to go together. He swore to protect all those dear to him, which is why he offered the girl help in defeating the boss. Henri shouted that he would help the girl fight this monster. Oria was very surprised by this statement, and the boy continued, saying that he had come all this way to save her. The girl closed her eyes and smiled, turning to the guy. Moving closer to his ear, she quietly told the guy to mind his own business. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to handle the role of her partner. She asked if the boy really intended to fight in those rags, although now was not the time to show off, but Oria shared that she couldn't understand at all how the boy was able to get here through these monsters. Henri already wanted to justify himself. Suddenly, 2 men were heard shouting nearby, saying that they had found another trap. The second man complained about his job, to which the first asked him to stop whining. Gilbert Stein, a man with level 82, he says he will demand double payment for this. Keels was standing next to him. Enerton, a level 75 guy. Keels looked at the guy and recognized him as a level 1 prisoner and asked what he was doing here, to which the girl next to him was surprised. She asked sharply, "Is the boy really a level 1? He didn't really know. Henri answered positively, to which Oria sighed heavily. Suddenly, she came as close to him as possible, sighing again. Hugging the guy, she asked him not to twitch, to which Henri was very surprised and didn't understand at all what was going on here. The girl explained that she couldn't leave him here if he was level 1, so he promises to protect her. Henri realized that the girl remembered him as the one she met on the street. He really wants to prove that he is no longer the same person he was before. Suddenly, he shouted that a golem was approaching them. Oria replied in a serious voice that the boys shouldn't worry so much about simple golems. Each of the team members was able to destroy the golems with just one blow, which greatly shocked Henri. The boy could only open his eyes wide with his first level. Now that he realized what kind of guys his team consisted of, Oria sharply informed him that there were still a few traps left, so they couldn't relax now. Keels asked his crew if there were too many goblins coming to them. Gilbert loudly announced that he would convince them to demand extra money for this. Walking down the corridor, the girl abruptly announced that they were near the last trap, which should lead them to the boss. Super reliable shield forward, his small figure sharing his determination with those around him. Oria was surprised that someone who was level 1 had so much enthusiasm. Taking his shield, she reminded him that the boy was not allowed to move now. She ordered that the boy should not dare to disturb her and prepared to use a 50% increase in magic. Taking a step forward, she came to move forward with her team. Walking forward, they moved straight to the golem's feet. Keels noted what a big guy they had gotten, and Gilbert complained again that he would demand more money for something like that. Slightly squinting her eyes, the girl made our monster and was surprised. Is that really all? Keels said with confidence that it was worth checking first what the monster was capable of, and victory was in order. He used the axe technique. He struck with all his might, using the skill of crushing rocks. But the gold didn't even move after such a blow. He didn't care. Jumping back from the counterattack, he informed the team that the physical attack would not harm the monster. It didn't matter to him. He suggested that the girl try to use magic. Oria replied that she would try to drown him with magic alone. The golem was faster. It attacked with a huge amount of super sharp stones. The girl froze in place, not knowing what to do. But Gilbert was faster. The moment the stones almost hit Oria, he put his huge shield in front of her, protecting her. One of the stones threw the girl's staff out of her hands with a powerful throw. Oria turned around and screamed loudly about her loss, not knowing what to do as the staff lay on the ground. She decided to go to him and ordered the boy to stand still. Henri wondered if he would really do that. As the girl tried to walk through the rain of stones, the boy's eyes lit up with an idea, and he said that it would be better for the girl to wait, and he himself ran forward to save and return the girl's staff. Just as quickly as he ran away, he also ran back quickly, returning the girl's staff. Oria was very surprised by this. She didn't even notice how the boy ran away. Even with her high level, she couldn't see his movements. She wondered how much stamina this guy had. But all thoughts were interrupted by Henri's shout for her to act quickly. Oria grabbed her staff, preparing to attack. Using the water blade, she left a bunch of holes in the monster. After the golem, only its remains remained, saying that it would not return to life. Kills arrogantly said that their witch was the best. At that moment, she doubted whether she should even raise the staff because she could be mortally wounded, but Henri ran up to the girl with a bright smile, saying that her attack was amazing, while Oria thought that he was able to bring her the staff. Of course, she couldn't see everything, but he risked his life for her. The girl understood everything. He had come a long way. The boy had not come here to show off with his head down. She quietly thanked him. Henri did not hear and asked again. The girl already wanted to repeat it, but suddenly a huge magic circle appeared next to them. Oria reported that it was a dangerous trap that covered the entire floor. The girl explained that she felt incredible power from this. She knew that the sorter in front of them was here for a reason, but in order to activate the trap, she ordered them to remain vigilant because right now they would be transferred to the real boss. The team found themselves in a small cave. Gillert noted that it was too quiet here, and Kills shared that he had a very bad feeling, while Oria looked ahead into the darkness. Using her analytical vision, she informed the team that there was someone ahead. She slowly began to list what she saw, in addition to the huge amount in the form of a shield, sword, katana, mace, axe. She began to list the status of the monster. Agility 5/6/7, Intelligence 1956, Resistance 3743, Defense 3925, Attack Power 4101, and a new pack of dangerous weapons. It was too much for simple adventurers. Name, Automatic Knight. Level. After a pause, Oria said that the boss's level was 100. The group of strong guys were surprised, Their levels were significantly lower, and they had never met anyone who could have such a level. Henri clenched his jaw. Standing in front of him was the boss of the hidden room himself. Even Guillermo's level was much lower than the boss in front of him. Gilbert wondered what kind of nonsense this was. He didn't understand how there would be a boss of such a high level that no one could defeat. Oria replied that that was exactly why she came here. To her team, she began casting attack increase, trying to help her team so they could defeat this monster. Standing with her back straight, she cast the same spell an infinite number of times. She raised her head sharply and turned to the boss, asking if he understood what she was unhappy about now. He had suddenly appeared here and killed many of her comrades. The monster threatens the very activities of the adventurers and promises that the boss will pay for it with his life. Raising her hand, Oria began to speak, saying that in the name of Schmeich, the ruler of Garabos, for the sake of order in his city, he swears that he will destroy the monster with his own hands, no matter what it costs her. Henri seemed inspired by such a speech and opened his eyes wide. Engine level 100, he did not understand what was going to happen now. Gilbert agreed with the girl's thoughts and added that he was not at all against fighting for him. Kills sadly added that perhaps they were fighting together for the first time, but he had to do it. Gilbert rarely stepped forward, covering his team with a shield, telling the girl to prepare some strong spell. Oria loudly asked if he really thought she was weak. The monster quietly said that his technique was excellent. With one blow of his sword, he struck both the shield and the man in front of him with one blow. Gilbert's eyes widened, realizing that his defense had been penetrated so easily. It was as if it had never been there, even with the magic cast. A scream was heard nearby. Someone was calling the man, but he was no longer a survivor because the monster had pierced him with almost all of his weapons. Kills cursed loudly, attacking the boss in front of him. Thoughts of revenge were boiling in his blood. He was ready to avenge not only his city, but also his already fallen comrade. The guy knew he was open after the attack, and the strike was perfect, and wondered if his hand was moving of its own accord. He also noticed that the monster had no blind spot at all. Oria wanted to help, but Kills stopped her, saying that she had better prepare her spell now. The girl closed her eyes to quickly help her comrade and save him. The guy understands that he needs the girl's magic to win, and all he can do now is buy a little time and continues to repel the monster's attacks. Henri looked at this with wild fear in his eyes, realizing that he too could fight this monster. He walked forward a little and asked the girl all she needed for a strong spell was a little time, and asked if that was true. Oria tried to stop him. Gilbert was alive and knew he had to keep fighting. Suddenly a boy ran past him, throwing him a small bottle of medicine. The man was surprised that the first-level prisoner ran straight into the boss's arms, loudly asked what the boy was up to, and tried to stop him. Keels was breathing heavily. He was badly wounded, but his strength was leaving him. He wanted to run away, but he had no strength left. Unable to dodge when he attacks from all sides, it looks like this is his end. The boy suddenly hit the monster on the head, drawing all its attention to himself. Heels was also very surprised by the prisoner in front of him and loudly asked what he could do with his first level. He added that the boy would die, and Henri thought so. The monster can't hit him in any way. With the increase in agility, his reflexes have become much faster, and his dynamic visual acuity has also improved. He sees all the monster's attacks in advance, in slow motion, and manages to dodge them. He was finally able to understand. 100 happens when dexterity exceeds 1,000. Kills looked at all this with wide eyes. He could not believe what he was now seeing in front of him. Gilbert also wanted to say something about this boy. All he could do was accept the fact that they were saved by a level 1 boy. Oria came closer, thanked the boy, and ordered him to step back. Henri did not dare contradict her and quickly got out of her way. The girl now knew how to get here, and that was enough for her to protect the adventurers from the worst. She increased her magic power through training, and the ruby staff helped her reach her limit, as well as her equipment, and collects it together. In addition to all this, strengthening spells are cast on her. All this energy is ore in just one attack. She promises that the monster will now experience the greatest firepower and summoned a huge fireball. With a wave of the staff, the entire cave was painted in a bright scarlet color of fire, while a huge ball covered the monster completely, distracting and destroying it. Slowly, the fire incinerated the monster. His entire body slowly began to burn and turn to ash. The weapon fell from his hands. Oria stood straight. She had just managed to defeat the level 100 boss. It was just something. His weapons and armor slowly melted after being attacked by a huge fireball. Henri looked at the girl, admiring her abilities in magic. Suddenly, someone pulled him closer to themselves. The men suddenly pressed the boy and began to hug him and pat him on the head, saying that he had definitely managed to surprise them. Oria appeared nearby and added that it was only thanks to Henri that they were able to defeat the monster. The boy stood up from the ground and said that his powers were exaggerated. The team definitely did not agree with him. For them, he was a hero who was able to save them. Henri apologized sharply, saying that he did not know about her situation. The girl smiled and replied that everything was fine. She decided to thank the boy from the Schmick family once again. She thanked him politely, and added that every adventurer in Garibos owed his life to him. Gilbert added that the guild can now be informed that Trump's dungeon no longer throws him into a secret room with an invincible boss. Kills smiled and shared his emotions, how surprised he was by the boy's abilities. He was a real hero. Henri could only thank him for such nice words. In fact, he was afraid that even if he increased his agility with the Book of Truth, it would still be of no use. But the boy only becomes stronger. Aria said that now he definitely won't win. Henri did not immediately understand who the girl was talking about and asked about it. Oria clarified that when she first met him, the boy was at the feet of a man, but now Henri is definitely stronger. Henri realized that this was indeed the case and that he had nothing to fear now. Gilbert was sitting at the bar and abruptly put down his mug of beer and swore loudly. The girl next to him asked if maybe he had stopped drinking already. The man hit the girl, ordering her to shut her mouth and stay away from him. He was screaming that he had been humiliated by a little boy. He, a man from the Great Three, a guy appeared in the doorway and turned to his boss. The guy apologized for not being able to find the boy. The man's face took on a sad tint. Helmer suddenly grabbed his comrade by the neck and lifted him into the air, threatening to strangle him. The guy tried to justify himself by saying that the boy always walks alone, so it's hard to find him. The man didn't care. He told him to think with his own head. With a cruel smile, he reminded that Henri had a sick sister and added that he himself had told the boy about this. Helmert threatened to tear him to pieces, no matter what it cost him. The guy fell to the ground and began to cough after the recent strangulation. The man threatened that the boy would regret not dying in a ditch somewhere when he kicked him out. The guy did not understand why his boss suddenly got so attached to this kid. Helmert smiled and began to laugh wildly, which frightened his subordinate next to him. The man threatened that he wanted to see the wild fear in the boy's eyes when he convinced him to kill him, so he needed his sister. He's going to have some fun with Henri's sister. The girl, lying in bed, suddenly began to toss and turn. Breathing heavily and sweating rapidly as if in delirium, she turned to her brother, asking him to run. A loud laugh was heard in the cave. Kills was trying to catch the agile boy who was running away from him very quickly. The guy was surprised that he could not catch the boy. Henri was able to protect Aria. He was able to protect someone dear to him. He wants to get home as soon as possible and tell his little sister everything about how they dealt with this boss. Suddenly, the monster's helmet began to drain an ominous aura, which greatly confused the boy. He turned to the team. The boy asked if it didn't seem a little strange to them. Gilbert also looked at the helmet and asked what he meant. Henri clarified that he was surprised by the lack of any experience, although they had already defeated the boss but did not receive anything. Suddenly, dark energy emerged from the helmet like a huge wave, blocking everything in the cave. The boy suddenly ran up to the girl, shouting for him to be careful. Using his evasion skill, he pushed Oria away. She didn't immediately understand what, but then a huge crack appeared behind them, which could harm the couple. The ground began to crumble beneath the feet of every room, forming huge cracks that injured Keels and Gilbert. Two were seriously and dangerously injured. Oria called both of them by name and wanted to run to save them, but she was stopped by Henri's small hands. He shouted for the girl not to climb in there, otherwise she would also be injured. The boy used the evasion skill to save Oria. The girl followed something strange with her eyes and asked what was going on. In the fog of all the destruction, she saw a shadow which she immediately reported to the boy. She concluded that the shadow had emerged from the armor, was attacking from all sides. Oria tried to understand what this was all about, and the only thought was that this was the second form. Change of form. When the boss is weakened to a certain state, he gains new abilities, and the power of his attack and the effectiveness of his skills increases. If this happens, then fighting the boss, whom it seemed you had already defeated, will become much more difficult. Raising her staff into the air, Oria tried to hit the shadow with her spells. But no matter how much she tried, the shadow was able to escape from every blow. The girl noticed this and told the guy, so she definitely would not be able to hit him. The shadow set a target in the form of Oria and Henri. It tried to attack, but the boy was faster and used dodge. The girl asked if he couldn't hit the shadow with his agility. She asked him to try hitting the place where he would land. Henri lowered his head, admitting that he only had 10 attack power. The boy used dodges and simultaneously scolded himself, forcing himself to think of at least something to help the girl and defeat him without causing damage. Oria stood in front of the boy and said that they were still alive only because of Henri. She added that the boy definitely couldn't use dodge forever. Henri himself understands this because dodging in a frame requires a certain amount of life. When he can no longer use dodge, then they. Suddenly, something came to the boy's mind, some kind of brilliant idea. He turned to Oria abruptly and said that he had one plan. The girl became interested and asked what he had come up with. In a serious tone, Henri asked if she was ready to trust him with her life. The huge doors in the boss room are a marker that Henri can walk through the wall here, and the reward zone can only be reached after defeating the boss. Here, everything is different. Even if the boy jumps through the wall, there is no guarantee that there will be a room behind it or he will simply crash into it, and he also did not know if he could do it together with Oria. Henri told the girl this whole plan and called it an adventure in which the probability of failure is higher than the probability of success. The boy asks if Oria can trust her life to someone who is always at level 1. The girl was very surprised and took a step back after hearing about life. The dark shadow rises into the air again with its huge, threatening figure hanging over it like a blanket of danger. Henri grabbed Oria and used his evasion skill several times in a row in an attempt to save her. Out of 70% of the boy's life, only 50% remained, and the girl began to worry very much about Henri. She understands that if it were for him, she would no longer be alive. And not only now, he always saved her when she needed help the most. Oria finally realized that the level here didn't matter at all. The boy turned sharply to the girl. She smiled warmly and said that she believed with all her heart in Henri and his abilities. She says she trusts him with her life. These warm words gave Henri a new wave of determination and self-confidence. Oria asked if the boy had any plan, to which the boy stepped forward, standing in front of him with his small shield. He abruptly asked the girls to increase his protection as much as possible. This greatly surprised the girl. The girl came to a realization. She asked sharply, "Does the boy really want to take on the entire attack of the monster?" To which she received a positive answer. Oria was even more surprised and reminded that even Gilberto couldn't withstand the monster's attack, and he was level 1. She shouted that the boy could not survive this. Henri shouted that he had to. Oria shouted that she would take the attack. According to her, she had a better chance of surviving. The boy did not argue and ran behind the girl. The witch took a defensive stance, forming a shield in front of her. Henri suddenly turned to the girl, which greatly surprised her. The boy said that he would never see them again, and turned his gaze to the 2 men who died protecting him, remembering their help. Oria also felt sad. She promised that she would never forget their feat and that she would definitely make beautiful coffins for them in the mansion. Henri shouted sharply about the approach of the monster, to which the witch sharply concentrated, although with tears in her eyes, she grabbed the weapon tighter. Suddenly, the shadow struck the ground with all its might. A huge wave after a powerful blow along with dust flew straight at the couple behind the protective spell. The shield began to crack. From the huge impact, the water magic shield slowly fell apart into pieces under a powerful wave of dust and dirt. The shield couldn't withstand it, and the pair flew towards the wall at great speed, and it looked as if they were about to crash. The boy turned around and used the dodge skill. Having reached the wall, a second later, Henri could not see anything. It was dark. Damn dark. There's nothing behind the wall of the boss fight. The boy doesn't believe it. He couldn't believe that they ended up in the void. Because of the pitch darkness, it is very difficult for him to tell where they are. But they definitely failed. The dangerous monster was left in his cave alone with himself and Oria's lonely hat. The couple fell into endless darkness. Henri realized that they had accidentally ended up outside the dungeon. It looks very different from the outside to the inside. In other words, a dungeon is another dimension, the space of which extends to infinity. At least that's what they say. The boy began to loudly apologize to the girl for the fact that they fell beyond the dungeon, Suddenly, a small streak of blood appeared from somewhere. It was Oria. Blood was trickling down her face from her eyes and nose. Henri tried to reach back with his hand to save the girl, to protect her from falling, but of course it was impossible. The girl and the boy fall further and further into the unknown. There is absolute darkness beneath them. Suddenly, they hit a hard surface with a loud noise. The protagonist understands that this is the ground, although he feels that he is touching something. His hands begin to feel the surface. He understands that there is definitely some surface here. The boy turns his attention to the girl and calls her name. He examines her and realizes that she is still breathing. This causes him to open the vessel. He carefully places the neck of the bottle against the girl's lips and gives her a drink. This makes eating better. The protagonist hugs Oria and silently thanks God that she is okay. He is very glad that she is alive. The boy turns his attention upward and says that most likely they fell to the very bottom of the backside of the dungeon. There is nothing here and he wonders what they should do. There is absolute darkness and emptiness around them. The boy lifts the girl onto himself and squints. He tries to see something ahead and realizes that there is something glowing there. He wants to try to get there. Ahead, he sees a small spark of light, reminding him of a star in the night. He needs to find a way out as soon as possible, and he must give Ariel the medicine because his time is running out. The boy is getting closer and closer to his cherished goal. Suddenly, the action moves to a bar. A man loudly places a glass on the table and orders him to pour another. The bartender behind the counter agrees. Guillermo is sitting at the bar, clenching his fist in anger. He is unhappy that they still haven't found his house, and he wants to eliminate him as soon as possible. He complains about his partners and says that they are of no use and that there are always helpless people around him. He pulls the handle of the toilet, but it does not give in. The man angrily kicks the door and loudly asks who is taking the toilet. He asks him to do his business faster and asks if he understands who he is making wait, and then says that he is one of the big three. Suddenly, a man comes out of the toilet. He is surprised that Guillermo is also in the big three and assumes that he has also come a long way. Suddenly, the man looks at the stranger with fear and asks him for forgiveness. Valdemar stands in front of him. The man smiles lightly and shakes his hand. They haven't seen each other for a long time. Valdemar pats him on the shoulder and says that he thought he would find him in the bar. The man is surprised that such a person was looking for him and asks what business he has with him. Valdemar says he came to him about Henri. The man reminds him that he borrowed it for a while when he was leaving town. Guillermo panics. He thought he would ask him how he was doing. Meanwhile, Henri realizes that he still has a little bit left. He wonders what it is and says that it feels like something is falling. He patiently carries the girl on his back. Finally, when he approaches it, it turns out to be a polygon with patterns in a circle. Henri notices that it is very beautiful. The boy says he has never seen anything like this before. He laments to himself that he has no skill like analysis. The guy thinks he can look at the status bar. If he can get his hands on the thing, he might be able to figure out what it is without having to analyze it. Henri holds his hand out. However, suddenly a warning appears in front of him. The system warns him that receiving unrealized data can cause serious errors and asks whether he wants to receive this data. The protagonist asks what it is, and considering that there is a warning written here, he becomes a little scared. He assumes that it is not worth taking. However, this is the bottom of the other side of the dungeon and there is nothing here except endless darkness. He turns around and thinks to himself. In the end, Henri says to himself that he doesn't know what will happen. But if there is even the slightest chance to return, he will do everything possible for this. The boy presses the yes button. Suddenly, he appears near the cave in the open air. Henri is amazed and realizes that this is the entrance to the Trumpet's dungeon. The protagonist does not understand how and when they manage to get to the surface. A small crystal flashes in his hand. The system says that unrealized data has been received. Henri wonders if it's the thing on his hand and remembers that the system was saying there were serious errors. He checks his entire body for any damage or marks, then looks at his status and carefully reads the window. Then he looks through his entire inventory and counts everything. He understands that nothing has changed and is surprised that everything ended so simply. The protagonist is incredibly happy that they were able to get out of the other side of the dungeon. He doesn't know how they did it, but in any case, they did it and it's only evening. He will have time to give his sister some medicine. The boy jumps up and runs forward quickly. Waldemar asks Guillermo if everything is okay with Henri. The man is a little downcast but answers positively. Waldemar is very happy about this and smiles modestly. He reminds the man of what he said when he left it to him. The main character returns. Waldemar then said that he would take him into the group and then get rid of it beautifully. Waldemar is unhappy that the man kicked him out. Guillermo screams his justification in fear that he thought the main character wouldn't last a day alone. However, the second man disagrees with him and calls him names. He believes that no words are enough to describe his stupidity. Waldemar says that all he had to do was bring him to a dungeon with high-level mobs. The man thinks it's as easy as pie. Guillermo says he has done so more than once. He is nervous under the gaze of the interlocutor. Each time the boy used evasion and returned alive. Waldemar is amazed by his words and asks again. Suddenly his expression becomes serious and he suddenly stands up abruptly, suggesting that they go somewhere else. The other man asks him what happened. Night falls. The moon appears in the sky. Two men are walking near a forest. Guillermo asks Waldemar what he wants from him. Suddenly, the man takes out his huge sword and points it at his interlocutor. Waldemar says that he is no longer of any use and cannot kill Henri. The man gets scared and asks him to wait. He won't stand on ceremony with him anymore and will kill him with his own hands. Waldemar asks him if he knows why evasion is called a failing skill. The man explains that this is because it is difficult to use. In order for the dodge to work, it must be used at the very moment of the enemy's attack. If he hesitates even a little, it will not work, and usually the success rate is no more than 10%. He wonders who would take such a risk when the chance of getting fatally injured is so high. He recalls how the protagonist used dodge many times and says that this skill has no equal if he has the ability to use it. The man immediately understands what the interlocutor is leading to. Henri knows how to use it. Waldemar says that in a direct confrontation, Guillermo will not be able to defeat the main character. Suddenly, the man starts laughing hysterically in response to his remark. He says that Henri and Waldemar decided to laugh at him apparently. He takes the opponent's sword in his hands and suddenly breaks its blade with his bare hands. Waldemar reacts modestly. The man says that he, as before, cannot stand it when people make fun of him. He will kill anyone who dares to laugh at him, no matter what the cost. The man shouts in rage that if he continues in the same spirit, he will not become an exception. Waldemar only smirks in response to his remark, and looks at him condescendingly. Guillermo screams that a boy with only 10 attack power cannot be the strongest, and he cannot even leave a scratch on him. In his opinion, this helpless boy's fate is to die in despair. Few in the Garabos could stand against Waldemar for even a minute in the arena, but Guillermo is one of them. Waldemar wonders to himself whether he should leave this matter to him. The other man continues to laugh. Waldemar silently addresses Wiesen and tells him that Henri is still alive. The man wonders how fate will turn out. He smiles. The action moves to the house. Morning comes. Oria has already woken up and is looking out the window from which the light comes. The butler comes into her room and is glad that she woke up. The girl assumes that someone saved her. The man answers her question positively and says that the owner of the weapon shop brought her to the guild, and before him some adventurer carried her on his back. A slight blush appears on the girl's cheeks, and she realizes that the man who saved her is Henri. The action moves to a weapons shop. Its owner greets Oria and is surprised that she is dressed very beautifully. The girl says that he will be properly rewarded a little later, but now she would like to thank him personally. The man says that this is unnecessary and laughs. Suddenly, Oria blushes a little again and asks if Henri has passed by. She would like to thank him too. The man thinks about this and suddenly answers her question in the negative. He says that he has no time for this now. The girl does not understand what he is talking about and asks him again. The main character himself is now fighting against a huge monster. The guy uses the dodge skill. He is back in the Trump dungeon and is currently fighting a crystal golem. The recommended level to fight this monster is 62. The protagonist looks at his huge opponent with determination and says that he must become stronger by any means necessary. The protagonist understands that when the monster begins to accumulate energy, he has a second or two maximum to react. In these 2 seconds, he must manage to jump back. That is exactly what he does. In this way, he does not even need to dodge, and only the agility of his body is enough for him. He can even handle a crystal golem. Although he is clumsy, he has a whole bunch of ranged attacks. The main character dodges all of his projectiles. If you move away from him, he should attack in one direction. He understands that if he tries to get closer to them, he will attack her anyway. The guy is eager to fight again, and understands that the main thing is not to give up and not to despair. However, the golem uses a rock wave, and the ground around it becomes covered in huge crystal spikes. Henri realizes that it is spreading all over the floor, and she is literally driving the adventurers up the walls. If the main character manages to slip under his feet, he will be safe. Henri imagines a picture of himself standing near the golem's feet, and also if you grab his leg during an attack, during which there will be no damage. The golem will try to shake it off, and then the protagonist will be able to use dodge and carry out his attack. This is the pattern for passing through the wall in the room with the crystal golem. The protagonist lands flawlessly on his feet. Suddenly, he sees a small chest in front of him on a small altar with lights. It shines in the soft light of the lights, and around it, quiet tongues of flame flicker. He slowly walks towards the chest. Feelings of excitement and curiosity overwhelm him. Henri understands that this is a reward for completing the trap dungeon, and this time he compared the rewards for the first completion in the guild and decided that this is what he needs. To move on to the next level, he needs this. Fighting with the automatic knight, all he could do was run away, and the fact that Aurea saved him was pure luck. The protagonist remembers his comrades. Gilbert and Kills were much less fortunate than him. He closes his eyes with bitterness. The boy climbs the steps and asks himself, who knows, maybe something like this will happen again. Henri can't even allow himself to think about not being able to protect his sister. He needs it now. He opens the chest and the whole room is filled with bright light coming from the chest. He takes out a small book from there and thinks to himself that this is an attack skill. The protagonist holds a book of knowledge in his hands. It is a passive skill, and when used slightly increases the chance of a critical physical attack. Henri swallows his saliva with excitement and looks with excitement at the system window, which gives him the choice to use the item or not. The protagonist throws all doubts aside and presses the yes button. Suddenly, the protagonist feels a huge surge of strength and his head starts to hurt. He squints. A system sign appears in front of him for a slight increase in the chance of a critical physical attack. It increases the probability of inflicting more damage with a physical attack by 3%. The system tells him that the minor increase in the critical chance of a physical attack has been used up. In order to deal critical damage to the enemy, it is necessary to hit a weak point. A weak point is an area with relatively low defense based on the value of 3 indicators. He recalls the Facile dungeon. There, monsters had weak points in certain parts of their bodies. Until now, even if he hit a weak point with a knife, it still didn't cause any damage. The protagonist has no idea how much he will have to increase his attack power to deal this much damage, considering that he only has 10 now. He reaches his hand towards the dagger in its sheath. The boy takes out a dagger and looks at it with a determined look. Henri thinks that the main thing is that a start has been made and now perhaps he can kill the monster and raise the level. The main character smiles modestly and blushes slightly because he is very excited. His heart is beating very hard. He quickly runs to the fortress. He is impatient to see what this insignificant hobby of the physical Criteron's chances is. He also wonders what the slight increase in physical crit chance means. He thinks that if there is a minor, then there is also an average. The guy assumes that the minor is average, and then the significant. When he collected the Books of Truth, he was able to raise his agility to level 1150. He also wonders what will happen if he turns, the same with the Book of Knowledge. The protagonist smiles and realizes that he needs to try this. He quickly runs away from the monster. Henri has already collected several books of knowledge and looks at his prey with an admiring face. He is very excited and very curious about what will happen next. First, the boy wants to know if a minor can become a medium. He presses the yes button again. Henri the Initiate opens his mouth and loudly heals that he thought so. The system tells him that the skill has been used and this increases the probability of inflicting great damage on the enemy with a physical attack by 7%. He also wants to know what a significant increase means. Henri presses the yes button again. He loudly exclaims positively with joy. The system says again that the skill has been used and it increases the probability of inflicting more damage on the enemy with a physical attack by 50%. He also wipes his face afterward and realizes that finally what he really wants to know. The guy picks up a huge book with a sword on the cover. Henri wants to know if there is anything higher than significant magnification. The system window again says that the skill is used and writes that it increases the probability of inflicting more damage on opponents with a physical attack by 99%. The main character is that this is an extreme hobby. Henri is amazed by what he has done and understands that this is not the limit and that more is possible. He thought that a significant attraction is the ceiling. That is why he took only 3 books. On the other hand, he thinks that 99% is more than enough, and it can be said that almost every attack of his will be critical. However, he really wants to know what will happen after the emergency, and he decides to run for another book. After some time, he brings another 10 pieces and sits down on the ground in front of the system window with a smile on his face. Henri wonders what will happen if he uses the Book of Knowledge when he already has an extreme increase, and if there is a chance that the critical rate will increase to 120%. He thinks it might be more than 100%. The main character says with a smile on his face that then he could raise the damage much faster than if he stopped at just a slight increase. The boy presses the button again and a girl appears in front of him. The system says that at the moment, the skill Extreme Attraction of Critical Chance of Physical Attack is the best, and the rest is still in development. The main character looks at the system window in amazement and doesn't even believe what's happening. Before going into the dungeon, you need to make sure that everything is in place. The protagonist looks at all his things and realizes that he has a small shield from the golem, fruit and water, a restorative potion, a map and a knife. All his things are in place. Henri puts the weapon back and apologizes to him. He will take it some other time, and he only has to understand what happened after. He remembers the past where he looks at the system point in surprise. The extreme increase in critical physical attack chance has become impossible to use. The boy wonders how long this maintenance will take them. The protagonist looks at his sleeping sister and says that he just wanted to go check if he could level up. This is what greed leads to. Henri notes that he has indeed become very greedy lately, and says that if he really manages to level up, he can become stronger. Maybe then he will be able to save up a lot of money and buy a medicine that will cure his sister. Or maybe it drops in high-level dungeons or is given as a reward for the first completion. He strokes his beloved sister's head and says that the stronger he becomes, the closer her recovery is. The main character wants to see her smile as soon as possible and remember the past with a smile on her face, even before Alareth stopped getting out of bed. He remembers the girl greeting him with a smile on her face. Suddenly the girl falls silent. The main character looks very bad. He is all dirty and wounded. Henri puts the medicine on the nightstand and immediately goes to bed because he is very tired. His sister says goodnight to him, looking at his back out of concern. It was a year ago, and they wanted to die during another expedition to the dungeon, and they had nowhere to go. Then Valdemar introduced him to the stupid Guillermo and said that if he became an adventurer, he could earn money for his sister's treatment. However, the group treated him very badly. The boy understood that he was doing this for his sister, and he was grateful only for the money he could get. He understood all this perfectly well, but it was very difficult for him to cope with the difficulties alone. The next morning, the main character will be with his younger sister. She calls her little brother and asks him to wake up. Henri asks her to let him sleep at least on his day off. The girl is unhappy with the situation and refuses his request. The boy tells her that he does not want to get up. Elareth says that in that case, she will go alone and resolutely heads out of the house. The protagonist only wishes her luck, to which she returns and says that she will really go alone. The girl says that he didn't understand her and she will go for a walk alone. The main character lies in bed for a while, but suddenly jumps up. The little sister had health problems since birth. They had a rule that if she went out somewhere, she was with someone. The girl in the hat looks at the landscape with admiration. In front of the main character and his sister, there is a very beautiful, endless sea. Ilaret is very happy about this. The girl is incredibly happy that she was able to go to the sea and have fun. The main character notices that this is very strange because usually his sister liked books. The girl tries the water and says that it is cold. Henri sighs and understands that if she wanted to come here herself, then why not? His sister calls him along and shouts that the water is very pleasant. The main character decides to entertain himself since he was dragged here. Sister and brother have fun together at the sea. They splash each other with water. The main character manages to catch a fish because his agility is 150 points. Henri jumps off a huge cliff next to Elerith, and a huge amount of spray falls on her. Both of them are happy and contented. A girl with a smile on her face tells her brother that she hasn't seen him smile for a long time. The boy doesn't understand what she's talking about. Elerith suddenly cries and says that she is very happy. The girl throws herself on her older brother's chest and cries. Henri is shocked by this. She screams that if he is having a hard time there, then he shouldn't be adventurous and she doesn't need any medications. She would feel much better if she could just see the smile on his face. The boy looks down at her sadly. Henri understands that this is why she pulled him out to the sea. The girl nods in response to his question. The boy silently calls her a wonderful child and remembers himself. He looks up and notices how blinding the sun is. He shouts that he needs to try again and wants to go jump again. Her brother shouts from the top of the cliff and that his sister's kindness has spoiled him too much. Henri jumps off the cliff towards his sister and shouts to her that she no longer has to worry about anything and that the girl should rely on her brother. He sprays her again and shouts that he will do everything to keep her smile on her face. Elerith laughs loudly until tears come. They are together. The main character strokes the girl's head and says to himself that seeing her smile, he can move mountains. The boy smiles sweetly, looking at his sister, and says that he will try for her. The protagonist says goodbye to Elerith, realizing that she will not answer him, and today he goes to the dungeon again. After some time, the front door through which the boy came out is smashed to pieces with a crash. It is Guillermo who kills the front door of their house with his hand. He loudly addresses Elerite and with a creepy expression asks her to play with them for a while. The guy says he found him with his tracking skill and Henri is not home at the time. Guillermo praises his subordinate and says he did a great job. All the other comrades are silent. One of the subordinates says that there is no one in the house and almost nothing. Guillermo suddenly hits him hard on the nose and asks if he is a fool. The man says with a smile on his face that here is everything they need and what he values most. Guillermo wonders where she is. The boy asks his sister what their boss is going to do. She tells him that he just wants to torment Henri. The girl understands that he wants to make her watch him cry. The man greets the girl sarcastically and says that he has wanted to meet her for a long time. He has an arrogant smile on his face and notices how cute the girl is. He kicks the bed and screams for the girl to wake up. One cat, because she is in a coma, does not react to this at all. Guillermo grabs her by the hair and pulls her up. He asks her if she wants to have fun with him. But Elerith doesn't react, and his smile disappears as quickly as it appeared. The man angrily hits the girl in the face and demands that she wake up. He throws it on the floor. All his subordinates look at this in surprise. Guillermo himself is furious that everything is not going according to his plan. Guillermo angrily kicks her in the body and shouts at her to cry and roar. The man furiously asks the unconscious girl why she does not react to his actions. The woman comes closer and checks the baby's pulse. She assumes that the girl is in a coma and that these drugs are apparently keeping her alive. Guillermo understands that this is very boring. He grabs her hair again and frowns with displeasure because the girl can neither scream nor cry. The man does not understand why she is needed at all and why she breathes. Guillermo asks himself what to do with her, and suddenly a very funny idea comes to his mind, which makes an evil smile appear on his face, more like a rock. The man says that since there is nothing he can do to her, she should just lie down and sleep. He roughly throws her back onto the bed. Guillermo has a very cruel smile on his face as he orders his team to follow him. The girl doesn't understand what he is going to do. The main character's entire house is ablaze with bright flames. Everyone watches from the sidelines, unable to help. The noise of the raging fire spreads throughout the quiet neighborhood. However, Guillermo laughs loudly as he looks at the burning building in front of him. All his subordinates are amazed by their boss's actions. The girl asks if it is really possible to do this, and the guy says that he does not know the answer to her question. Only one girl finds the courage to confront the man. She screams at him furiously that he is out of his mind and doing terrible things. The man does not understand what she is talking about and looks at her questioningly. The girl screams that the girl, the main character's sister, may burn. Suddenly, Guillermo's face breaks into a sinister, cruel grin. He says it's very funny. The man explains that he wants to take everything from Henri, his house, his money, and his family, and see how he will suffer. Suddenly, the sound of a falling bag of money and medicine is heard from the side. Guillermo turns around and greets the boy. The man says he's a little late and greets him. His team stands in front of a burning house. The protagonist looks at his burning house and his enemies in amazement. The main character's house is burning down. Guillermo looks at the boy with a crazy smile. He opens his eyes in amazement. He quietly asks where his sister is and if she was inside. Guillermo tells him that she is properly browned inside and points to the burnt house. Henri passes by him. He moves towards the burnt house. The guy asks the boss whether to kill Henri. Guillermo stops him with his hand and says that it is too early. The protagonist kneels down in front of his burnt house and calls out his sister's name. His entire body shakes with a fine tremor. The protagonist leans back. His face is distorted by a grimace of rage and despair. Tears of rage stream down his cheeks. Guillermo watches in delight as he screams. The man asks him to scream and cry. He wants to see the protagonist's despair and asks to show him what he wants. Guillermo asks the protagonist if he thinks he is to blame. In his opinion, Henri is wrong because his sister died because he is weak. Guillermo screams that she died because of his weakness. The boy screams loudly in rage. Memories of his younger sister flash before his eyes, how she read a book, how she knitted a wreath, how they frolicked together at the sea on a day off. She has always been the most precious person to him, and her image never leaves his head. The protagonist stops crying and just sits quietly on his knees. Guillermo laughs loudly with satisfaction behind him. He says it's an incredible feeling and asks the boy what he can say. The man asks him to show him everything. Henri rises from his knees with difficulty. Guillermo demands to see despair and his face twisted with horror. The protagonist turns around. However, his face shows only iron confidence and determination. A single tear rolls down his cheek. His eyes are ready to kill his opponent. The man is amazed by his face and asks what's wrong with it. The team boss doesn't like the way it looks. He shouts loudly and asks him if he understands who he dares to look at like that. In Guillermo's opinion, he is nothing. At this time, Valdemar is standing on the balcony. He believes that they will soon begin fighting, and the man assumes that in this fight, Henri will be able to escape alone without any problems using evasion. But the moment he realizes that he is a coward who has shown his back to the enemy, he will be forced to deal with him personally. However, he has been doing something interesting for as long as he has. It turns out to meet a person who is favored by fate itself. A system cat appears in front of the main character, emitting a very bright light. Certainly, the word fate alone was not enough, but it is more like the sprouts of efforts. The protagonist is surprised that the status bar itself came out. Everyone else is also very surprised. Suddenly, a young girl appears on the system panels, saying that she has come to report the introduction of a skill that was previously unavailable. The protagonist is surprised. The system says that he has already confirmed the use of the Book of Knowledge for this reason right now. Here it will update this skill. Now his skill will be Extreme Enthusiasm for critical chance of physical attack. Light envelops the boy's entire body. The girl is sure that he will be satisfied. The guy is surprised by this skill. At the moment when fate favors him, he can either miss this moment or seize it and continue on his way. If the second is true for the main character, then he has the opportunity to become a first-class adventurer. That is, he dreams. The main character's gaze is serious and dispassionate. Henri takes his blade in his hand. The young guy is not interested in what kind of aura is around the main character's knife. His girlfriend from the same team says she has never seen anything like this. The guy can't even imagine what kind of skill this could be. He turns to his boss and says he doesn't like it. He smiles and is surprised that they were afraid of Henri. The man says that after all, he only has 10 attacks level 1. In the man's opinion, it won't even leave a scratch on him, so he doesn't care about this skill. Even his acceleration, which he boasts about so much, will become useless when his world runs out. Guillermo screams that he will kill the main character. The man says that Henri is the first who dared to look at him with such a bloodthirsty look, and until now everyone who stood in his way to the big three ended up kneeling before him. However, the man says that he is the only one who, no matter how many times he tried to kill him, never bowed his knee to him, and his very existence infuriates him. Guillermo takes out his gun and says that today all this will end. The boss of the group says that he will kill him with this thing and notes that his blood is boiling. In the hands of the man is a battle axe of despair. And so about 400, and if the enemy's level is lower, the attack increases by 2.5 times. The man orders the boys to stand still and that he will kill those who are not happy with something immediately. Guillermo notes that he has not experienced such a feeling for a long time. Two opponents stand opposite each other. The protagonist does not react to his words. The man asks him if he's going to attack, but he immediately apologizes and says that it's a stupid question because he won't do any damage. In that case, he'll start with his fastest attack. Guillermo delivers a quick blow. The man thinks to himself that the protagonist will not be able to dodge with his dodge. However, suddenly the aura around his knife disappears, and this makes the man tense up a little. Suddenly he realizes that the boy has given up, and realizes that fighting him is useless and has simply given up. This makes a smile appear on his face. The man in this case will simply kill the main character. He already thought that Henri had courage, but apparently his life has the same insignificant end as his life. He screams at the boy to die. His weapon comes down, but Henri remains unharmed. The man is shocked that his attack failed and wonders if he used dodges, as the boy did not move an inch. Suddenly, his subordinate calls out to him. The girl screams for him to pay attention to his hand. The man looks in amazement at the hand that the main character cut off with an axe. Guillermo looks at his severed limb and screams loudly in surprise and pain. His horrific scream echoes around the area, and he leans over his hand trying to stop the bleeding. The man does not understand when he managed and when he cut off his hand. Guillermo wonders if he did it. The main character stands motionless. He does not react to anything at all. The man asks Henri if he did it, and you shout that he couldn't do it because he only has 10 attacks. The boy suddenly dies and asks him if he's talking about it. Henri says that he has the fatal blade in his hand. The boy cries and informs him that this is a skill that will give him the same pain that Alareth had to endure. The man looks at him amazed. Guillermo's subordinate watches this in shock. She watches in horror as her boss clutches his injured arm. The man next to him says that the boss's defense is not small even among adventurers. He immediately pulls himself up and says that it is rather high. Guillermo himself does not understand what kind of skill this is and how this could happen at all. Guillermo repeats the words of the main character and says that this is absolute nonsense. The girl from the man's team uses the enemy search. She screams that they are all fools and Henri could not have done such a thing. He could not have cut off his hand without anyone even noticing. She thinks that it is obvious that his friend is hiding somewhere here. However, her friend stops her and says that it was Henri who did it. He has the highest agility in the group and he saw everything. At the moment the attack was about to begin, Henri jerked away, cut off his hand, and returned back. The girl is surprised that this is all. The guy says that he did it in an instant, and his dexterity is much higher than his. None of them can stop his attack. Guillermo shouts that this is exactly what he wanted from the beginning. Suddenly, the men feel his body gradually begin to recover and become covered with a glow. The boy does not react to this in any way. Guillermo understands that this is his assistant, who uses quick help. The girl screams that it won't last long, but at least it will stop the bleeding. The man looks at her in amazement. However, suddenly his surprised expression changes to the most terrible rage. He suddenly lunges forward and hits the girl in the face with all his might. Her brother immediately comes to her and helps her. He asks the boss why he's doing this. He says that he told his subordinates not to interfere. Guillermo screams that she thought he was losing and suddenly presses her harder into the wall with his foot again, showering her with crushing blows. He asks the girl who she thinks he is. The boy doesn't react to this at all, he just watches. The rest of Guillermo's subordinates surround the girl and try to help her somehow. The boss himself says that he will not lose to the main character. The man says that now he will understand what the difference means. There is a huge difference in the ranks of adventurers. He uses a dreadnought and the ground beneath his feet crumbles from the effort. With this skill, he greatly increased his defense. Now we are forced by 42503. This is enough to withstand his attack. He calls the main character to attack with 10 attacks in his mind. The man doesn't care if he rushes in the blink of an eye. The moment he hits him, he will have a chance to cut him down. The report has already started. However, suddenly, despite everything, the boy cuts off his opponent's left hand. He is absolutely unable to defend himself. His other hand with the axe falls, and he looks at his former subordinate in horror. The man screams in pain and rage. He raised his defenses and doesn't understand how it happened. Guillermo wonders if it's not enough. Meanwhile, the protagonist opens the jar and drinks its contents. Guillermo realizes that he was unable to reflect his fatal blade skill. The boy says that whatever he plans, it's all useless. He explains that this skill is able to ignore the enemy's defense, and he will not forgive the man for what he did to him. The man turns to his subordinates and asks them why they stood up and demands their help in the fight against the boy whom he once humiliated. All his assistants are confused and do not know what to do. The man shouts at them to quickly kill the boy. However, his entire team is in fear of the main character. They all freeze and look towards Henri. He looks too scary. They understand that now the boy is capable of turning any armor into paper, no matter where they hit, and the blow itself is impossible to notice. All three understand that this is the same as suicide. The man shouts at them to listen to what he says. He insistently demands help. However, even the girl who had previously tried to help him simply closes her eyes and bows her head. Guillermo realizes that they are useless and begins to run away from the boy. Henri asks him where he is. He catches up with the man and hits him. Then Henri strikes his opponent in the back. He uses the Doom Blade skill and cuts the enemy in half. The young man then completes his attack with a series of lightning-fast strikes. The enemy is defeated and falls to the ground in a pool of his own blood. The man's allies look down sadly and realize that their boss is lost. The girl, looking tired, calls Guillermo by name. Henri stands over his fallen enemy and thinks about how he is one of Garabos's big three who fell at the hands of a level 1 prisoner. Comrades Guillermo was told that they needed to run faster, because after the boss, Henri would pounce on them. The girl said that if this is what Henri wanted, then she was ready to atone for her sins. The girl said that in this group Guillermo did whatever he wanted, and they just looked at it all and rejoiced. But what he did this time goes beyond all bounds. Henri threw his sword and the boys were surprised. Guillermo was moaning as he lay down. Henri sat down next to him and swung his fist. He attacked the man straight in the head and dealt 10 attack points. He remembered the man's face when he said that he was the only one who did not bend the knee to him. Henri said that no matter how much a man humiliates him, he never lost heart and endured everything that happened. The young man began to cry. He endured all this because he had Elerith. No matter how much the man beat him, no matter how much he kicked, he always knew that Elerith was waiting for him at home. He was able to endure all this only because of her smile. He will do everything to keep the smile on her face. After all, he promised her. The young man doesn't know how to live without her now. Guillermo's comrades looked at the crying Henri. The man sat down and said that he was also ready to pay for his sins. The girl was surprised and asked if they were really suggesting that she run away alone. The young man said that it was all Guillermo's fault. The girl said that they didn't stop him, which meant that they were to blame too. The young man asked how they could have stopped him. The second girl said that the man was a hopeless egoist and that things were not easy with him, but it must be lonely to die alone, so she would stay with him. Suddenly she noticed the man begin to move. The man screamed and went crazy. He sank his teeth into Henri's shoulder. The comrades were surprised that the boss could still fight. The man said that this was no longer a fight. Most likely, this is his true fighting instinct. Henri didn't understand what to do because in this position he couldn't use dodge. Suddenly, Guillermo said that he would not die alone. Henri guessed. Guillermo said that he would take Henri with him and then use the self-destruction skill. Suddenly, a sword pierced Guillermo's head. Everyone was shocked. Guillermo turned to face the attacker. Henri didn't understand what happened, but suddenly he saw a tentacle. He didn't understand what it was. Suddenly, he saw a hand. Suddenly, a familiar silhouette appeared. It was Elerith. The girl addressed the man by name. The knight thought he saw a ghost. The girl said she saw her too. There was a girl in front of them. They couldn't believe that she was alive because her whole house was burned to the ground. The guy asked who she was. The girl greeted them and said that her name was Someone. She didn't have a name, so she called herself Someone. The hero asked her to stop fooling around and asked who she was and why she was in that body. The girl said that she was very grateful to him. It was the unrealized data that he had raised. Someone borrowed the girl's appearance. Long ago, in a certain kingdom, in a certain state, data were created and only content was given. These data were seen in dreams. What would they do if they had access to the outside? They thought about which city they would attack and how they would exterminate the human race. These were given neither an appearance nor a name and were thrown away, and no one could ever find them. But they continued to leak this data, refusing to surrender. And they dreamed of the day of reckoning. They wished that one day they would sweep across the big world like a storm. Someone said that she is that very unrealized data. The protagonist couldn't wrap his head around it. The data he had picked up while wandering around the other side was now in his sister's body. The guy said it was his sister and asked him to give her body back. The girl refused. She said it was very difficult. She had a hard time dealing with that body. Now it belonged to her. The hero asked her to give it back. He asked what she was going to do with his sister's body. The girl said that she brings misfortune to the human race, and this is the meaning of her existence. The boy couldn't believe that his sister had become a monster. This is a monster that suddenly appears, which is simply unthinkable to be destroyed by one group. This is a disaster of universal scale, the elimination of which will require the joint efforts of many groups. One of the knights used a fireball. Someone said that it was useless because she was very strong. She said that in order to make an opponent suitable for them, another one would be enough. Someone said that they should have fun creating monsters. The girl said that it was very simple. Anyone who had a unique skill to create a monster could do it. She told everyone to repeat after her. First, you need to prepare the body. The higher the adventurer's level, the stronger the monster will be. She told them to imagine that they were making plasticine. The man's hands were in place and the forehead was healed early. Someone ordered him to eat her. The monster ate half of the girl in one bite. One of the adventurers started to attack. The girl ordered him to eat everyone. She said she felt sorry to call him just a monster. People around started running. Someone said that she was his mother. She said that one must approach the issue responsibly and give him a name filled with motherly love. The girl saw that the monster had already finished eating. The entire group of adventurers had been eaten in an instant. Even though all the people had high levels, he ate high-level adventurers, so he grew a little. The girl ordered the shapeless giant to attack. The guy realized that the monster would attack the city. Until now, he had fought bosses of any size only because he could use dodge. Now he used all his mana and all his potions in the battle with the monster. He had never defeated a boss before, but he couldn't just let the monster go. The girl was indignant that they were resisting her. The boy did not understand what was happening. Someone shouted not to stick her head out and said that she was occupying the body. She stopped moving. The girl told the boy that they needed to run. Ellerith said that she would detain the giant without a uniform, so the hero must flee. He replied that he could not run away. The girl said that the monster was getting out of control and she would not be able to contain it for long. The main character started shouting her name. The girl asks what he is doing and says that her name is someone. She said she took control when the girl was hit on the head. The guy asked if it was really his sister. The girl said that one bothers her outside and the other inside. She called them a noisy family. The girl told him to listen carefully, as she had been waiting for a body on the wrong side for a very long time and was finally able to get it and get out. Someone turned to the formless giant. She said that first he had to defeat the boy because she was tired of him. However, instead the monster attacked the girl herself. The main character did not understand why she was standing still. At the last moment, the formless giant told her that he would not follow her instructions and would do whatever he wanted, so she should not interfere with him. She had just managed to get outside, but it was as if nothing had changed. The girl was once again of no use to anyone. She was always treated like trash and she didn't understand what she had done to deserve it. She was a raid boss and came to bring misfortune to humanity. Someone said that she would destroy the world to its foundations. The main character grabbed her. The guy asked if she was okay. The girl did not understand on whom she should take out her sin. The monster told her that he hated her, and it turns out that he also wants to kill her and be free. She said that since she is a raid boss, everyone hates her. The main character said that he would protect her. He said that if the monster wanted to hurt her, he would protect her. The girl said that he was no better than anyone else. She said that she doesn't want to protect her, but her sister who was inside. Someone called him a liar and said that she couldn't stand people like him more than anything. The guy said that he was a lousy brother because he couldn't protect his sister. He said she was right, that he wanted to protect her, and he hated her for taking his sister's body. However, thanks to her, he was able to see his sister again. The main character thanked her. The girl told him not to think that she would save him now. The guy said that this time he would protect her. Someone called him stupid and said that he couldn't defeat him. She said that his sister inside her started screaming because she was so worried about her brother. The girl invited her to chat a little. The guy completely ran out of mana because it all went into the battle with the monster, as did all the potions. He needed to somehow replenish it. When Guillermo's group was killed, they dropped items. He wanted to try raising the mana potion first. Only the monster's right hand had grown very much, and he dealt his main attack with it. If the guy is careful, then with his current agility he cannot worry about his attacks. It remains only to figure out how to attack. He apologized and said he would use the potions. His mana has been restored. He'll have enough for more than one time. The protagonist used the Fatal Blade skill. It was his only chance to attack the monster. Doom Blade is a skill that ignores enemy defense. To activate the ability, you need to hit the enemy one time. Mana consumption changes depending on the enemy's defense. His maximum mana is 90. During the battle, he used a potion 4 times and fully restored his mana. If he does not defeat him before the potion runs out, he will die. The hero thinks that even if he breaks through his defense with his Fatal Blade, with such a short dagger, he will hardly be able to inflict significant damage on him. He had to remove the giant with a dagger. Added to this was a limited amount of mana. It was complete madness, but he had no other ideas. He had to destroy the monster from the inside. At some point, a crazy thought came to his mind. What if the defense was so huge that the mana consumption exceeded his maximum reserve? Then right during the attack, his mana would completely run out, and once inside, he would no longer be able to get out. He used the Fatal Blade skill many times. The hero continued to use it. Each use took away 30 magic power. This meant that the monster's defense was around 3,000. He needed to analyze the monster's weak points. The main character has already used all the potions, and now everything should be decided. If he can't defeat the monster now, he won't have another chance. The monster easily grabbed his leg, stretching its hand out from under the ground. It's not that easy for the main character to defeat him. The guy wanted to use the dodge skill. The bones in his hands were shattered into pieces. He couldn't feel his left foot. He needed to drink the potion quickly. The guy couldn't find his bag. The monster's wound healed. The hero persuaded himself to get up. He only had 25 magic powers left. For a while, he would only be able to use dodge. The girl cut it in two and he couldn't believe it. She said that she was watching everything from the inside and was very worried about her brother. The guy apologized to her for making her watch all this. The girl told him to stop fighting alone. His wounds healed and his strength was fully restored. His sister couldn't have such an ability since she wasn't an adventurer. However, someone's body was capable of such things. Alareth said that the girl was inside her. They chatted and she agreed to lend her body for a while. She said that when you are outside, the voice from inside is really loud. Someone was unhappy, so what they talked about with her would be their secret. The girl said that she would not be able to occupy the body for long. The guy asked her to tell him about herself. Alareth said that she didn't want to miss a second while they had the chance. Now there were 2 monsters. It was because the girl cut it in 2. The guy asked her to step aside. She said that she would fight too. She started housekeeping after she found it difficult to walk. The girl suffered every day, watching how he had to take risks in the dungeons because of her. Alareth asked to be allowed to fight alongside him. Now she was in the body of someone. The main character told her not to do anything stupid. The girl replied that as long as he was around, she was ready for anything. The question was how they could defeat the monster. His attacks were still primitive. He could dodge them without any problem. The girl said that she could not dodge as beautifully as he did. The monster's ability was that it could regenerate. There were more of them again. The monsters could not be cut in 2. Even if he is attacked, he will immediately recover. Alareth told herself not to give up. The guy used the Fatal Blade. The monsters multiplied again, and the heroes needed to regroup. The guy used the dodge skill. They couldn't defeat the monsters and needed to find a way to damage them. The girl said she wanted to check something. The guy said that Alareth was right. If the monsters couldn't be cut down, then a strike might work. He wouldn't be able to try that way of fighting. Besides, they flew straight into the burning house, and perhaps the fire will also cause them some damage. The main character didn't know how to defeat those who couldn't be damaged. The boy saw a hand that grabbed the girl. Even the tip of a severed hand was restored. However, it was very small, and the guy used the Fatal Blade to cut it. The main character said that he had figured out how to defeat the monster. He asked the girl to listen carefully and said that he would distract him, and in the meantime she should share him as much as she could. He couldn't do it with his knife, so he counted on her. The girl said that if she did it, There would be more of them. The guy asked her not to worry and told her to trust him. He told her that she could handle it. The hero believed in her so much that he was even ready to become bait. He believed that she would cope. The girl herself wanted to fight with him. The more she chopped them, the more of them there were. That their numbers became fewer. But the smaller they became, the faster they regenerated. Individually, they were weak, but there were too many of them. The main character said that they defeated one monster, and it was all thanks to his sister. The girl said that she knew he would come. It seems that if it is cut, it can only regenerate to the size of the cutoff part. It also seems that even that reduction has its limit. The smaller the monsters, the less mana they consumed. When he cut off the tentacle that grabbed his sister, he spent only 7, and when he destroyed the baby, he spent only 1. The angel's embrace completely restored strength and mana. Now that they knew how to deal with him, they wanted to get them over with quickly and spend the rest of their time together. They said that if they are together, they are invincible. Ellerith said they had to deal with the monster before it caused them any trouble. They couldn't let it get to the city. The hero thought that he would never see his sister again, and thought that he would remain in the depths of despair. But now she was next to him. He said she was right and suggested that they put an end to the nightmare together. Now it was all over, and it had been a very long day. Suddenly, the status bar appeared. The main character's level has been increased to 2. His sister said it was great and he leveled up for the first time. Until now, he had not received experience because he could not deal damage to the monster. And experience was determined by the amount of damage dealt during the battle. If you deal a lot of damage, then the amount of experience received will increase. Not to mention the amount of experience you can get if you finish off the monster. Now he is no longer a level 1 prisoner. He finally succeeded. The protagonist level increased again. This was because he killed a high-level monster. The greater the difference between the adventurer and the monster, the more experience he will receive when killing it. The guy with his level 1 defeated the monster created by the raid boss. His level increased by another 1. His level increased many times. He couldn't believe his eyes. His attack also increased. He had already developed a complex about the fact that his attack never went above 10. What made him happiest was the increase in attack. It was because of this that he felt that he was getting stronger. His level kept increasing. The girl told him not to hold back, just because she was there. He had done something amazing, namely saved the city and saved her, so he should not hold back his joy. The hero did not understand what he had done to deserve such a beautiful sister. He couldn't believe that he had gotten to level 15 right away. He still couldn't get over it. The girl said that she was also terribly happy. Sword skill has been acquired by killing a certain number of monsters with a sword. It was a skill in wielding a specific weapon. Even if you wield a weapon without the skill in wielding that weapon, you won't be able to get any benefit from it. It was because of his lack of weapon skills that his attack was 10. He only used his herb-picking knife for show. Well, from today on, he could finally wield a real weapon. The hero said that weapon skill compensates for low attack. The girl said that she doesn't understand what he's talking about. The guy answered her that from now on, he would become even stronger. The basic skills you learn when you become an adventurer are swordsmanship, sword strike, desperation, lance mastery, dash, and so on. You first learn the weapon mastery skill and a couple of other related ones. In order to become an adventurer, you need to go to church and get the status. Instead of his father, he also had to go to church to somehow feed his sister. The only skill he got was evasion. Now he has gained the skill of wielding weapons. The girl said she was happy for her brother. He said it was all because she was there and thanked her. Ellerith said that now that he was safe, she had lost all her powers. She apologized to him and said that she could no longer occupy the body. Now it belongs to someone. Just controlling it requires incredible effort. The guy said he had a restorative potion in his bag and she should just tell him how much she needed and what he could do. The girl replied that nothing could be done about it, so she asked him to let her stay in his arms a little longer. She asked not to worry about her because she would still be in that body. She just needed to get some sleep. The girl asked him if he remembered telling her stories before bed as a child, and asked him to tell her one while she was falling asleep. The hero told her the story of a boy who fought for his sister to save her. Then she became an older sister to him. He said that the girl was an aristocrat and he was a nobody. Ellerith said that she could no longer open her eyes. The boy replied that it was time for her to fall asleep. He hoped that someday he would meet his uncle from the gun shop and the other girl. His sister said that he would meet them. The main character said that he would definitely introduce them. He promised her that he would find a way to get her back. The girl asked him to be kind to someone. She didn't understand why they were so fond of pushing the boundaries. Someone said that just a little more and the girl's soul would have burned to the ground. She said she needed to sleep. Alarith thanked her and asked if she would take care of her brother. Someone said she ate weaklings like that for breakfast. The girl asked her not to say nasty things. The hero talked about how he needed to find new housing. He said that they needed to go to the city first. Someone said that she would go with him. The guy asked her if she was sure, because the city was full of people, and asked her to promise him that she would control herself. She asked if he could promise not to break a single toy when there was a whole pile of them in front of him. Someone said that in that case she would be patient. The guy thought that her perception of the world was radically different from the human one. She was a disaster for all mankind, and the whole essence of her existence was the extermination of people. He thinks that his sister said something to her, and that is why she is acting so calm. He wondered if they could get along. Someone said she was tired of her clothes. The guy said they didn't have any money for new ones. The girl said she didn't care because they were stiff and uncomfortable. She asked if she could undress when they got to the city. The hero said that was precisely where it wasn't appropriate to do that. The boy thought that the girl saw something in the sky. He said she was unpredictable. The hero met the man more than once when he was with his father and was surprised at what this man was doing next to him now. The man laughed and said he was wondering why the report was delayed. No one could have imagined that Benno's offspring would be able to kill Guillermo. The hero asked what he was talking about. He didn't know what to do. The guy thought about what the man would do to him if he found out that Guillermo was dead. He didn't want to go to jail. The man asked him why he was tense. He said that he was not going to blame him for anything and did not intend to tell anyone about it. He said that in their city, if a place in the Big Three became vacant, then someone had to take it. Now that the place was vacant, he asked who should take it. The guy didn't understand how he could know this. The man said that the main character should take a place in the Big Three. The guy didn't understand why it had to be him. There were plenty of tough guys in the city who would be outraged by this. The man said he would prepare everything. He said the information he received was very useful. The main character did not understand what information he was talking about, what he was going to prepare. Someone asked if the man had left. The guy asked where she had been all this time. The girl replied that her instinct told her she should have hidden. The man said that no one could have thought that Guillermo would lose the fight. And the city became more interesting. There is a tea set on the table. Aurea says that the tea smells wonderful, takes a sip and smiles. She finds the taste simply delicious. The blacksmith frowns. It seems he doesn't notice such subtleties at all, which he tells the sorceress. He slams his fist on the table and says that this is actually an armory. The girl smiles awkwardly and apologizes. She says that she has been coming here every day for some time now, and that's why. The man takes a sip with an impassive face and remarks that he can certainly understand the desire to drink tea and relax. He remarks that it must be very difficult to sit and wait for someone dear to him, especially knowing that the only thread connecting them is the weapon shop. The blacksmith asks the sorceress if he understands what is happening correctly. Aurea blushes. The man remembers how she once asked if Henri had come. He asks if she never got a chance to thank the guy for saving her. Aurea replies that it is so. Now she feels that the moment has passed, and she can't find another reason. The blacksmith sighs sympathetically and asks if the girl thinks that it is too late to do anything, and it seems that all that remains is to gather up her courage and call Henri herself, and the man would support her in this. The sorceress agrees that this is a good idea and thanks her interlocutor. Suddenly, the man remembers something important and rummages in his pocket. He unfolds a folded sheet of paper and asks the sorceress if she knows anything about it. The paper says something about a new dungeon. Aurea responds by taking out the same one and says that she also got it from the guild. A new Dungeon X has been discovered in the capital, and it has been assigned the highest difficulty level. The monsters that live there are unknown. The bosses are unknown, and even the initial reward for completing it is shrouded in mystery. Aurea says there are rumors that the reward for completing the first mission is a philosopher's stone. The blacksmith asks what kind of artifact it is. The sorceress explains that this dungeon was originally discovered thanks to literary sources. They said that the Philosopher's Stone is a universal medicine that can cure any disease, and even resurrect the dead. Such a statement makes the desired impression on the man. He says that this must be a very valuable thing. Oria says that it is not surprising that the Philosopher's Stone is in this incredibly difficult X dungeon. The sorceress feels that with her current abilities, she probably won't even be allowed in there. Their conversation is interrupted by an apology. The girl knows this voice. It's Henri. The guy is walking, barely holding the sword with both hands. Oria starts to panic. She doesn't know what to do from surprise, even though she's been waiting for the meeting for several days. This is why she went to the gun shop every day. The sorceress tries to gather her strength and act naturally. She wants to thank the guy for saving her. Oria smiles and talks about how incredible a coincidence this meeting is. Although, of course, what happened has nothing to do with chance. Henri recognizes her and addresses her by name. But something is wrong. It's as if some of the former enthusiasm is gone. The girl looks at Henri without taking her eyes off him. She feels something very bad about this. The blacksmith, not noticing anything, picks up the guy in his arms. He is glad that he has returned after all. Henri did not show up yesterday, and the man was worried about him. The girl thinks that something is wrong with him after all. It was as if he had changed. Oria is silent, watching what is happening. The blacksmith asks if Henri has brought the sword for sale, to which he receives an affirmative answer and heads behind the counter. Having gathered her courage, the sorceress calls out to Henri. He, as if nothing had happened, turns around to find out what is wanted of him. The sorceress asks if something happened to the boy. Henri is silent for a second, but still says that nothing happened. Everything is as usual. Oria does not believe him. Henri's eyes are completely empty and he is crying. At the same time, it seems like he himself does not notice this and asks again in surprise when the sorceress tries to find out the reason for the tears. The guy looks at the tears on his palm in surprise and wonders out loud what came over him. Oria even more, and Henri tries to quickly wipe the treacherous moisture from his eyes. Mentally, he scolds himself for being weak. After all, he promised himself that he would behave as usual. He has no home, no money, and no idea how to cure LRA. And now there's Waldemar, who's come out of nowhere and wants the guy to take his place in the Big Three. Henri met him only once, when Waldemar introduced him to Guillermo's group. And it all ended very sadly. Does he really want to drag the guy into some kind of adventure again? The blacksmith and the sorceress are extremely worried. Henri would like to ask these two for help, but there is no way to explain to them everything that happened. That his sister became a raid boss. That Henri dealt with Guillermo. That, after all, the guy walks through walls using evasion. If he had decided to ask these people for advice, he would have had to tell them things that simply cannot be told. Henri wipes away his tears and asks for his forgiveness. He puts on a smile and says everything is fine. The boy says he just wanted to sell the sword. The blacksmith hesitantly agrees, but Oria is not so easily fooled, and she demands that Henri slow down. She demands that the guy stop fooling around, because it's clear as day that he's not all right. The girl says that if he doesn't want to share, she won't pry. But it was also stupid to hope that you can just pretend that nothing happened, and that no one will notice. The sorceress declares that she has a task for Henri. Today he is going on a date with her. The guy blushes and looks at the girl, scolding him in shock. The blacksmith remarks that this was well said. He strokes Henri's head and says that if he keeps everything inside, nothing good will come of it. And at such moments, it is important to change the environment. The guy is silent, overcome with conflicting emotions. Oria grabs his hand and urges him to come with her. Henri tries to resist, but the girl adamantly drags him along. The blacksmith smiles after them and gives them a thumbs up. She holds his hand very tightly. Despite her outward confidence, Oria is drowning in embarrassment. She thinks that grabbing the guy's hand was somehow thoughtless. She wanted to invite him in a more elegant way. However, she can easily deal with unpleasant thoughts. The sorceress sends them to hell. It doesn't matter. Henri is not feeling well now. That means today she has to focus on cheering him up somehow. The door of the weapon shop is suddenly thrown open by someone from outside and hits the sorceress hard in the forehead. It seems that someone outside got tired of waiting for Henri to return. and while Aria, holding his forehead, comes to his senses and tries to understand who could have such power in their hands, the girl with a displeased remark grabs the guy by the hand and pulls him outside. Henri weakly resists, remembering that he asked his companion to wait for him outside. The girl asks where he is going. Aria grabs the guy's hand again, but Chan continues to pull him along. The guy finds himself between a rock and a hard place, not knowing how to react. Oria indignantly asks the guy's companion who she is anyway, to which Necto-chan snaps back, asking if the girl is tired of living. Chan claims that Henri is his toy, and she gets really annoyed when someone tries to take her toys away. The guy thinks that things are bad. How can he explain to Oria who Neko-chan is? The sorceress is irritated by such an impudent statement. She asks what made the girl think that she has the right to treat Henri like that. Someone casually asks the guy what Oria is to him. The girl blushes. She replies that Henri is her comrade in arms, and the man to whom she owes her life. Although this is not the feeling, the sorceress feels something different towards the guy. However, it is so embarrassing that the girl only stutters trying to say it. Chan roughly hugs Henri and claims that she can personally prove their connection. And if Oria is so interested in how, then she and the guy actually live together. This statement discourages the sorceress. She has her own associations on this matter. Oria turns away and wipes the blood running from her nose with a handkerchief. Henri scolds Chan for her behind her back, asking why she is setting him up like that. The boy calls out to the sorceress and apologizes. He introduces his companion as his younger sister. Allegedly, the thing is that she was in bed all this time, but now she is finally woken up. Oria, amazed, asks again about her younger sister. Chan becomes gloomy and says that if the girl says that word even once more, she will finish her off. Chin says that Oria doesn't know anything, so there's no need to meddle where she's not wanted. Henri says that there's no need to kill anyone, and there's no need to be so rude. The sorceress is tensely silent. The guy tries to apologize to Oria and says that they need to find a place to live urgently. All this time, Chan doesn't stop trying to beat him up. Henri says he's sorry, but he won't be able to keep the girl company. Oria becomes sad. She thinks that despite wanting to help, she doesn't seem to know anything about the guy. Chan makes a mocking face, and the sorceress decides that now it's war. She smiles and asks Henri if they could just go to one place then. There is a delicious pie on the table. Oria notes that there is nothing better than something sweet when the clouds are gathering overhead, and this is the best place in all of Garabaspots. Henri looks at the apple pie with appetite. Unfamiliar with the concept of food, Chan asks what this is. The guy asks if it's true that he can eat it. The sorceress cheerfully declares that of course he can. After all, it's so important to raise morale now. Chan indignantly asks where the meat is. Oria replies that if the picky companion doesn't want any, she doesn't have to eat it and wishes the guy a pleasant appetite. Henri really likes the taste of the pie. He tells Necto-chan that she should try it. It's so delicious. The girl doesn't share his interest in food that isn't meat. The guy tells his companion to sit down normally and thank the sorceress. Chan reluctantly agrees to try. Oria casually asks her to help herself. The girl casually sniffs a piece of pie and takes a bite. This produces an unprecedented effect. Chan's eyes widen and her mouth opens. She clutches her head and, not knowing how to express the feelings that overwhelm her, begins to jump around and roll on the floor. What she has tasted seems incredibly delicious to her. The girl yells at Oria that she is a fraud, and fed her a pie to get to her brain. The sorceress only smiles, chuckling. Oria smiles ominously and says that in a sense it is true. Sweets have one dangerous temptation. Because of the feeling of euphoria they cause, the likelihood of eating too much increases. And this leads to an increase in the area of the body that the enemy can attack. Necto-chan gets angry. Henri remarks that nothing will happen to her if she doesn't eat too much. He again asks his companion to sit normally and eat calmly, using cutlery. The girl suspiciously asks if nothing will happen to her. The guy assures that everything will definitely be fine. Henri thanks Oria and says that it was very tasty. The sorceress accepts the thanks with a smile. She asks what to do with Chan. The poor guy continues to be hysterical. She lies on the ground and keeps repeating that the sorceress wants to get to her brain. Oria notices that she keeps saying the same thing. Henri asks his companion to come over and thank him properly. Someone-chan suddenly jumps up and thanks Oria for some reason covering his face with his hand. As it turns out, she's crying. The girl says she had no idea that there was something so delicious in this world. Oria thinks that she somehow chooses her words interestingly. However, the sorceress does not dwell on this. Theatrically spreading her arms out to the sides, she declares that there is still much more, including the meat dishes that the girl loves so much. Someone-chan opens her mouth in amazement and anticipation. She points to a carcass of some animal being roasted whole and asks if it is tasty. Oria replies that it is very tasty. Then Someone-chan turns his gaze to the grilled sausages and asks the same question, immediately receiving a similar answer. Someone-chan is walking down the street, happily gobbling up the treats he bought. Henri apologizes for having to buy so much. Oria smiles and tells the boy not to worry. The girl reminds that she still owes the hero for saving her from the automatic knight. The guy says that she doesn't owe him anything. The sorceress blushes and says that they still seem to have a date and went out to have a bite to eat. Someone-chan points to a shop and, turning to Oria, says that there is something tasty here. Henri shouts at her that that's enough for today and this is the last time. The sorceress thinks that in reality, it looks more like they are babysitting some child. The guy says, as if in defense, that nothing can be done about Necto-chan. Oria laughs. The girl says that their companion is funny. Henri is silent. Someone-chan tells the shopkeeper that she needs 3 servings. The guy doubts the sorceress's words. She does look cute, stamping her feet impatiently. But one day, to save Alurith, Henri will be forced to make an inhuman decision. Thoughtfully watching Someone-chan, he sadly asks if there is any way to save a person whose body has been taken over by another personality. Oria asks again in amazement. Someone-chan, meanwhile, receives her food and holds it up like a flag with both hands. Her entire attention is absorbed by the new impression. Looking at her, the sorceress draws conclusions and decides that it is not worth interrogating the guy now. It would be better to wait until he was ready to tell her. So Oria says out loud that she doesn't think she's ever heard of such a thing. Henri agrees. Suddenly the sorceress remembers something. She hands the boy a paper and asks him to look at it. She adds that it says something about a new dungeon that was discovered in the capital. Henri reads carefully. Oria tells him that she heard a rumor that the reward for completing the game is a philosopher's stone. And with its help, you can bring the dead back to life. At least that's what they say. But this is still a reward for completing a dungeon of the highest difficulty. The sorceress suggests that perhaps this is the very miracle that can solve all those problems that are now troubling the guy so much. Henri tries to answer something, but the sorceress, as if remembering something, apologizes. She says that she did not think at all that it could be an impossible task. The guy answers that everything is fine. Henri recalls the universal principles of problem solving. If you encounter difficulties, raise the level. If something torments you, raise the level. If you want something, become stronger. If you put in the effort, you can get everything you want. That's what it means. Be an adventurer. Oria looks at Henri in surprise, but almost immediately blushes and breaks into a smile. Their idyll is interrupted by Necto-chan. She runs and shouts to the sorceress that she took everything. Judging by the shopkeeper's shouts behind her, the concept of paying the raid boss is unfamiliar. For now, the guy's problems are still there, but now he knows what he's going to do. After marveling at Necto-chan's antics, Henri thanks Oria for everything, and he will start by getting the Philosopher's Stone. The guy declares that he will become stronger. The sorceress smiles and says that she recognizes old Henri. Oria grabs Henri's hand and drags him along, saying that the guy looks completely inappropriate for an adventurer going to Dungeon X. That is why the sorceress will give him her parting gift today. Oria takes Henri to a clothing store where they quickly pick out a new outfit for him. And now the guy is looking at himself in confusion. And the sorceress and the store employee are discussing how the new look suits him. The new outfit costs 24,000 ELs, and the girl gives them away without a second thought. Henri is shocked and tries to comprehend the fact that such a large sum was just spent on him. Someone-chan runs out of the booth in horror and complains to Oria that they are trying to put some rags on her. The sorceress squats down, listening attentively to the child's naive complaint, and adds that, in fact, it suits the girl very well. This pleasure turns out to be even more expensive, but Oria still pays for it calmly. The guy says that he is embarrassed that she has to buy clothes even for Necto-chan. But for the sorceress, this seems to be an excuse to show off. She explains that if you constantly go to dungeons and level up, then you will have plenty of money. The girl asks not to worry about her solvency. The worker suggests that in this case, you just need to think. Henri takes this advice. Henri thinks about how high-level adventurers never cease to amaze him. He and the sorceress walk, holding Necto-chan's arms. Oria asks what happened to the boy's shield. Henri smiles awkwardly and says that he accidentally broke it on the monster, which only raises more questions. Because it simply can't be. The small golem's shield is very strong, and the sorceress will only be able to break it with strong magic. She wonders what the guy was up against then. Oria grows more and more gloomy, thinking about how one cannot worry at all in such a situation. She menacingly declares that they are now going to buy a new shield. Arnie can only agree with this. Near the weapon shop, the sorceress notices a man in a business suit. She wonders what he is doing there. Oria comes closer and asks what happened. The man says that he knew he would find the girl here. After all, she came here every day to see Henri. The sorceress irritably asks to move closer to the matter. The guy stands a little further away and thinks about what the topic of this conversation could be. Oria looks displeased. Finally, she thanks the interlocutor and says that she understands everything. The man asks her not to be late. Suddenly, he bows to Henri and expresses his hope that the boy will continue to take care of Oria. The hero is embarrassed by this and asks his unexpected interlocutor to raise his head. He says that he himself owes a lot to the sorceress. Oria continues to think about something of her own. The guy turns to her and the girl seems to come to her senses. She apologizes and asks not to worry about it. Oria calls a companion to buy a shield. The blacksmith does not seem very happy to see them. While the guy is examining the shields, he takes the sorceress aside and says that he is certainly glad that the girl cares so much about Henri, but as if there were better places for a date. Oria says it's okay. She wanted to come here herself. Besides, Henri seems delighted with what he sees. The man admits that the girl probably didn't make a mistake with the place. Meanwhile, the guy is tensely discussing what he should do. On the one hand, he wants something better than the small golem shield. Oria once again. Henri looks at the shield for 50,000 Ls and decides that he will pick something not very expensive. He will still be able to dodge the enemy's attack if something happens. Suddenly, Necto-chan calls out to him. She offers to test the shield for strength and asks to hold it tighter. The guy asks again in amazement. Someone-chan barely touches the surface of the shield with his finger and snorts dismissively. Her blow shatters the shield into pieces, and Henri barely manages to retreat. The unwitting spectators are amazed by what they see. The blacksmith wonders how the girl managed to break the shield so easily. Henri yells at Neko-chan, asking what she's doing. She snaps back, asking if the guy was planning on using such trash. Oria watches the exchange in silence. The sorceress thinks that there is something wrong here. She may not have much power, but she is still a high-level adventurer, and compared to a simple child, she should have much more power. A natural question arises as to who this girl is, and what can be said about Henri in this case. It would be interesting to know what he got himself into. Oria says he will compensate for the losses and hopes that the incident can be settled quietly. But for some reason, the blacksmith is crying. He cries and wails, not understanding how this happened. He made this shield with his own hands. How could a child break it? The man says he doesn't need to pay anything and doesn't want any money. Oria tries to interrupt him. The blacksmith said that he had broken this shield with his own hands, so letting it go would be a lesson to him. The man tells Necto-chan not to hold back and to break everything that breaks. The girl doesn't have to be asked twice, and she turns all the shields into a pile of scrap metal. Oria and Henri want to buy equipment here next time to at least make amends. But one shield still attracts someone-chan's attention. She calls out to the guy. Finally, she found a decent option. Small crystal turtle shield with 160,000 durability. Henri wants to apologize to Oria, but remembering the good advice, he stops. Instead, he passionately declares that he will never forget what the girl did for him. The guy promises that he will definitely go to the Dungeon X. The sorceress admits that she wanted to buy weapons and armor, but she had some things to do. So she has to run. Oria waves goodbye. Henri waves back. Turning around, Oria offers the boy to become stronger together. Henri blushes and agrees. The guy looks after the girl as she walks away. They have already said goodbye like this, but now it seems to the hero that this time they have become a little closer. The guy wonders what kind of business the sorceress was talking about. Oria breathes a sigh of relief. She is glad that she managed to meet Henri and calls up the status on the go. While choosing equipment, the girl wonders why it is so pleasant to realize that there is a person who is ready to fight side by side with you. And why does this give so much courage? Two people meet at the gate. Eckhart of the Big Three and Georg from the Big Three. Georg asks if Eckhart urgently called the Big Three together, to which he receives a negative answer. The guy says that, on the contrary, he thought it was Georg, but he didn't do that either. So there is only one option left. So it was Guillermo, which both of them state out loud. This arrangement does not suit either of them. Eckhart asks a rhetorical question. Georg is indignant that he was called by someone of such a low level. George suggests to sort this out quickly in hope. He says that even though the meeting is urgent, it is not a fact that that girl will not interfere. Oria, who is observing the conversation, asks if this is about her. She says that the Schmick family will be present, as Garabaz is in her possession. George reminds that he has already told the girl more than once that Garabaz is a city of adventurers, and it is they, the members of the Big Three, who will decide its fate. Garaboz's adventurers are subordinate to one of three clans: Scarlet Brigade, Dinero Guild, Nameless Clan. The strongest member of each clan is its leader. Therefore, he is a member of the Big Three. George declares that the meeting of the Big Three is a meeting of adventurers held by adventurers and in the interests of adventurers themselves, and the interference of nobles in the affairs of the city is unnecessary. The sorceress asks what happened to Garabos under the control of the Big Three: corruption, slave trade, protection racket, robberies committed by low-level adventurers. Oria asks if their motto is weeding out the weak. Georg is at a loss for an answer. Eckhart notices how things are not going well. He notices that his clan, the Scarlet Brigade, requires only one thing from adventurers to clear dungeons: strength. And if so, then why not recognize Oria, who herself distinguished herself as an adventurer, until she was nicknamed the Witch of Gabarosa? Georg laughs and notes that his interlocutor caught him. He adds that he would expect nothing less from the Guild of Dinero, which does nothing but protect the nobility and the rich. George says that Eckhart knows how to please the owner of the lands. The man prefers not to answer this. George declares that he will only recognize those who are stronger than him, and he doesn't give a damn about the babble of any weaklings. The sorceress smiles that if this is so, then they can do exactly as the man wants. The girl declares that she will make Georg regret his words. The man replies that he will wait impatiently. Eckhart offers to fight him first, since Georg has decided to raise his hand against Oria. After passing through the gate, they continue to bicker. Eckhart remarks that the place they've been invited to is too fancy a choice for a country bumpkin like Guillermo. It's the best restaurant in the Guild of Dinero. George replies that people always want to seem bigger than they are. The man opens the doors and turns to Guillermo, noting that they are a little late, although they couldn't help but keep him waiting. Eckhart, adjusting his glasses, asks him arrogantly what he intends to do if the restaurant's reputation is damaged by someone like that stepping through its doors. But the one who is waiting for them only laughs and says that it seems that the men don't know yet. Georg notes that they haven't seen each other for a long time. Eckhart says that he would never have thought that the person who invited him would return to this city. Baldemar sits at the table in front of them. He says that perhaps he just decided to share information with those who adore this city, and whether to thank him or fall into despair is the choice of the listeners. Meanwhile, someone Chan asks Henri what they plan to do next. The guy replies that first they need to find some housing, but that will require a lot of money. The girl asks if they are talking about the things that can be exchanged for meat or apple pie. The hero confirms. He says that's why they'll have to go to the dungeon again. Someone Chan isn't happy with this arrangement. She asks with displeasure if the guy really intends to make her drag herself somewhere, especially since Henri just exchanged the sword for his money. The girl asks why he exchanged that sword if he had already learned swordplay. Henri explains that such a sword is too heavy for him. He can't even swing it properly. But even without this, The sword of the traveler was very useful to the guy all this time. For him, this sword is synonymous with income. Today on the way to Garabos, he entered the Facile dungeon out of habit, but he completely forgot that his shield was broken. There was nothing to do, and Henri had to use the fatal blade. Only one hit was enough. And since the guy entered the reward zone after killing the boss, he will no longer be able to get the reward for the first run. Someone Chan takes the most important thing for himself and mockingly asks if Henri can't even shake this stick. What a poor guy. The guy is silent and thinks that for the girl, perhaps this really is just a stick. But for him personally, defeating the boss in Facile's dungeon took incredible effort. But now that stage is over. The F-rank dungeons are behind us. Henri says that he will now try the D-rank dungeons. He is sure that you can earn much more there. Someone Chan grumbles as he walks. The guy notices that he doesn't like them, because they remind him of the other side. He apologizes to the girl, asking if she can be patient for a little while. Henri promises that once they find a place to live, he will buy her as much meat as she wishes. Someone Chan's eyes immediately light up. She starts mumbling something about her desires. The guy asks again. Someone Chan blushes and says she wants apple pie. Before Henri can agree, he loses his balance. It's Necto-chan, inspired by the upcoming prospect, already dragging the guy along with her. She says that she should have said so right away, and calls him to the dungeon. A cry for help can be heard over the rooftops. While running down the street, Henri notices a child asking for help. He grabs passers-by by their clothes, but people just wave him off. With tears in his eyes, the boy says that his brother went to the dungeon but never returned, and he is only level 1. But the person he is asking is not convinced. The man raises his arm to strike, but Henri deftly picks up the boy in his arms. He asks if everything is okay and if he is hurt. Having received the answer that everything is okay, the boy promises to save his brother. The members of the Big Three turn to Waldemar. Jord asks what he is doing at a meeting of the Big Three. Eckhart asks why Guillermo didn't come. Waldemar suggests for now to imagine that he is here instead of Guillermo. George thoughtfully says that if that's what he wants, then so be it. Eckhart whispers to Oria, who is sitting in front of them. The sorceress understandingly, although with surprise, says, addressing Waldemar, that he is the former leader of the Nameless clan. She asks if the man was in the Big Three before Guillermo. Waldemar, in turn, recognizes the sorceress as the feudal lord's daughter. He says that it is great that she also came to the meeting of the Big Three. He invites everyone to sit down and notes that the Schmick family would do well to hear this too. The man says that he is the one who gathered everyone here today. Waldemar asks if those present can guess why he has called together those with enough influence to control the adventurers. Eckhart assumes that the man wants to tell them about the major changes coming to Garabos. Waldemar stands up and takes the sword in his hands. He says that there are 2 topics on the agenda today. To begin the first topic, he asks who among those present is familiar with this weapon. Oria unmistakably recognizes it as the boss sword from the Trunk Dungeon. Everyone looks in amazement at the offered weapon. Eckhart says he heard that the enemy was so strong that after Lady Oria's report, the road leading to the boss's chambers was blocked. He doesn't understand how that could be. Jig remarks that he knows there are those willing to tempt fate, but he hasn't heard a report of anyone defeating him alone. Waldemar asks the men if they really think that Schmick's daughter would attack the boss alone. And how are they not ashamed to call themselves the Big Three after that? Eckhart asks if Waldemar really means to say that he defeated the boss. The man answers with a smile that it is. After all, he has the sword. He suggests returning to the first topic. A box with an object. Waldemar says that after he defeated the boss, he received a tablet of prophecy as a reward for his first playthrough. Eckhart asks what is written on it. Waldemar replies that the future is Garabos. The tablet says that on the night when a bright star shines in the sky, a raid boss will descend on this city and bring with it death and destruction. The mention of a raid boss causes amazement among those present. The man says that if we count from today, it will happen in about 2 months. The raid boss can easily destroy an entire country. If he is not repulsed, then Garabos is finished. Oria, horrified, repeats the last word of a long tirade. Waldemar says that those present are probably wondering if they can defeat him by uniting the adventurers of all of Garabos. The members of the Big Three exchange tense glances. Eckhart notes that in order to unite all the adventurers, they need the leader of the nameless clan, Guillermo. He asks where he is now. Waldemar replies that Guillermo is dead. The adventurers look at him in amazement. Eckhart asks if it was Waldemar who did this. The man calmly replies that it wasn't him. George suggests that the leader of the nameless clan must have died in a dungeon somewhere. He notes that they may be rotten, but they are still the Big Three. He asks what kind of monster could have killed Guillermo. Eckhart asks Waldemar that if the person in question died in the dungeon, then why does he know about it before everyone else? The man calls everyone to calm down and notes that no matter how much they talk here, it will not bring Guillermo back. He reminds us that the raid boss is just around the corner and encourages us to talk about something more constructive. Having received no resistance, Waldemar suggests returning to the current topic. According to the information he received after killing the boss, in about 2 months, a raid boss will appear in this city, and to survive this, it is necessary to unite the efforts of all the adventurers of Garibos. However, one of the Big Three that controls these adventurers, the leader of the nameless clan Guillermo, is missing. This makes it very difficult for the adventurers to coordinate, which brings us to the second topic of today's discussion. Waldemar asks what they should do about the gap left by Guillermo's death. Gjord asks if they can count on Waldemar's help. The man answers in the negative and asks if his interlocutor is really serious about begging for help from someone who left this city. Waldemar says they'll have to decide without him. Eckhart says they can ask Sonata. He enjoys authority even among the most gifted adventurers of the nameless clan. In addition, he has very high potential in terms of leadership and intellectual qualities. Gjord points out that this is not a very good idea. After all, there are bad rumors about him. Eckhart agrees that this is true. George suggests the candidacy of a certain Zephyr. He is the strongest swordsman in the nameless clan, and they say that in this he surpasses even Guillermo. Eckhart says that this man is also not suitable. Zephyr is only interested in his own power, and they need someone who can lead the clan. The men discuss who else might be suitable for the role. Eckhart says that Habener is also not suitable, because he simply goes crazy on the battlefield. Oria asks if she understands correctly that anyone who belongs to the nameless clan can become its leader. Eckhart says that is true, and usually the strongest member of the clan becomes the leader. The sorceress says that in that case she also has someone to offer. She remembers that the guy was in Guillermo's group, which means he must also be a member of the nameless clan. She suggests casting Henri Crit in this role. Eckhart asks if this is a first-level prisoner, and if the girl is in her right mind. Jorg says that now is not the time for jokes. Waldemar looks surprised, but immediately finds the proposal wonderful. He declares that the meeting is over. The men try to object to him, saying that they have not yet decided on a new head of the clan. Waldemar says that his interlocutors have forgotten something, namely that Garibos is a city of adventurers. It offers to live up to the image and make a decision that is consistent with the wild nature of adventure. We need to hold a tournament that will determine the strongest in the nameless clan. Everyone who wants to take a place in the Big Three will participate in it. And let those who know their business fight for this title until their last breath. And whoever remains alive will become the new undisputed leader of the nameless clan, and a new member of the Big Three. Meanwhile, Henri confidently walks into the dungeon. The boy behind him asks to save his brother. Something strange is happening to Necto-chan. The girl falls to her knees. Henri turns around and asks what happened to her. Someone-chan remains silent. It's as if she's looking into an endless abyss, into its very essence dark and merciless. The girl suddenly starts running and hides around the corner near the boxes. The guy remembers that everything happened exactly like that time. He carefully calls out to Necto-chan. The girl sits with her legs pulled up to her chin and is visibly shaking. However, she still doesn't answer. Henri notices this trembling and also the sweat. He wants to touch his companion's forehead, but someone-chan abruptly asks him not to do this. The guy in response asks her not to be stubborn. He still touches his forehead and notes that it is quite cold. Almost in panic, Henri wonders what he should do. Whatever it is, he has to do something. Meanwhile, in the gun shop, the blacksmith asks his assistant to take over for him. When asked what happened, the man replies that he is bursting with a desire to create. He is going to head to the workshop. Walking briskly, The blacksmith notes that he probably hasn't been so fired up about work in 10 years. And all because that girl broke his shields. The man clenches his fist and decides that with these very hands, he will make the strongest weapon in the world, be it a shield or something else. He set this goal for himself at the very beginning of his journey. These thoughts make his blood boil. As he leaves the shop, the blacksmith thinks that if he can create durable equipment, he might be able to be of some use to Henri. And yet the girl is something. The man, of course, had already gotten used to the fact that in this city one shouldn't judge strength by appearance. He himself admits that he even liked the ease with which Nekto-chan broke all the shields. The blacksmith thinks that he will have to thank her somehow when they meet. Then, as if he were speaking of the light, Henri runs up to him. Someone-chan is lying on his back. The man says with surprise that he thought the guy was going to the dungeon. Henri asks if the blacksmith has a place where the girl could rest in peace. The man asks what happened to her. The hero persistently repeats his request for help and says that he has no one else to rely on. The man shouts that it is a stupid question and he will of course help. He invites Henri to his house, which is very close. The blacksmith leads the boy into a room with a large double bed. He says that this is his beloved's bedroom and that they can feel at home here. Henri carefully lowers someone-chan onto the bed. The girl immediately wraps her head in a blanket, continuing to shiver. Her empty gaze seems to be directed at nothing. The guy tries to understand if Nekto-chan is okay and what happened. But she only mumbles something incoherently in response. Suddenly, the girl screams with unprecedented anger to be left alone. She kicks Henri and asks if she asked him to look after her. She throws the boy out of the room and tells him to get busy saving the boy's brother. The blacksmith asks what she's talking about, and does anyone really need help? Henri turns around and replies that it is. The man thanks him. He says that the big three are in charge of everything in this city. Therefore, only strong adventurers can enjoy it. The blacksmith tells Henri that he can go and not worry about anything. And there will be someone in the house to look after Nekto-chan. The guy hesitates but quickly agrees. He says he will try to return as soon as possible. Until then, he asks the man to take care of her. Sitting on the bed, someone-chan says that she has gone a little crazy lately. And completely crazy. She's a raid boss. The meaning of her existence is the destruction of humanity. At this thought, someone-chan begins to smile maniacally and giggle. There is a knock at the door. The girl turns around and says with irritation that she has been fed up. She said that she wanted to be alone. But the door opens, and it is not Henri or the blacksmith who stands behind it. This is some other girl, very small. Henri wonders what happened to someone-chan. She doesn't look like a raid boss. She looks like a normal child, and she was so happy when she tried different foods. The guy has a bad feeling about this. Henri runs and thinks that he needs to finish the rescue as soon as possible and go back. It seems that he found the entrance to the necessary dungeon. Banero Dungeon. Its difficulty level is E++. According to that boy, his brother should be somewhere here. The recommended level to enter the dungeon is 32. This dungeon was formed in the spreading roots of a giant tree. For frank adventurers, this dungeon will be difficult to clear, considering how deep and winding its passages are. Henri wonders what a level 1 adventurer is doing here. Finding him alone won't be easy, and how the guy is supposed to find him anyway. A little further down the passage, he notices a magical stone. The crystal glows with a soft light. After killing a monster, its corpse disappears and drops a drop. For adventurers, this item is simply priceless. Henri thoughtfully examines the magic stone, kneeling down. People go down into the dungeons for this, and this one just lies on the surface. The boy is considering whether he should pick up the trophy. Suddenly, he notices something else. There are actually many magical stones, and they form a thin chain showing the path of the previous adventurer passing through these paths. The guy goes further, using the crystals as signs. They are scattered everywhere, and no one has collected them. It is the same as if there were money scattered here. It is difficult to even imagine such a thing. However, it is true, and they lead to the very depths. Perhaps high-level adventurers who already have enough money passed through here. Or maybe those who passed through here had other things to do. Henri continues walking, following the chain of crystals. He wants to see where they lead. The guy hopes that the boy's brother will be okay. I think he said that the brother has thick black hair, an earring in his left ear, and from the equipment, an axe with a shield. The sought-after adventurer at this time desperately fights for his life with a monster that looks like a huge rooster with a snake's tail. He barely dodges another attack and falls to the floor. The monster turns to him again. The guy realizes that he is looking at a cockatrice. The recommended level is 30. It seems like they are just making fun of him and his first level. The adventurer tries to get up and turns to his companion, saying that he doesn't have a single chance to defeat this monster. Sened reminds the boy that he already said that he won't help him, and if he's so stupid that he can't figure it out the first time, then that's his problem. The man dismissively remarks that adventurers have become smaller these days, and when he was level 1, he fought stronger monsters. The guy is horrified. It looks like the dialogue won't work now. Sened tries to encourage his companion and demands that he fight as if it were the last time. The boy turns to the cockatrix on stiff legs. If he tries to escape, his mentor will deal with him immediately. How did he even get into this? Cockatrice goes on the attack. Sened shouts that true growth is only possible when you defeat an opponent who is superior to you in both strength and level. That's how he himself became stronger. Which means the guy can do it too. The adventurer looks at his mangled hand in horror and realizes that this is the end. He's a corpse, and he can't survive this. Cockatrice breaks his shield into tiny pieces. Wounded, the adventurer falls to the ground. Sened demands that the boy stand up and take his axe. As he exhales, the guy replies that he can no longer fight. Sened asks contemptuously if he has decided to tuck his tail between his legs. The adventurer replies that he has had enough. Sened asks if the guy wants to say that he is a dog with his tail between his legs. The exhausted adventurer meekly agrees. That's right, he's a dog. He is a weak, pathetic dog. Wounded and crying, he asks for help. The guy screams that he doesn't want to die and asks Sened to help him. This has the desired effect on a man. In the rays of self-admiration, he thinks about how beautiful weaklings are, begging for salvation. Every time Sened saves someone from a monster, Sened is filled with self-esteem. The man cheerfully declares that nothing can be done about the unfortunate adventurer. He is going to engage in combat with the cockatrice, but he doesn't have time. Henri bursts onto the battlefield and with one blow of the fatal blade separates the monster's head from its body. Sened doesn't know what to say. Not paying any attention to him, the guy rushes to the wounded man. He says that everything is fine, and that he came specifically to save him. The adventurer thanks him with some difficulty but immediately begins to lose consciousness. The guy asks him to hold on and is about to get the potion. Meanwhile, Sened stands there, gloomier than a cloud, and seems to be planning to attack himself. But he immediately pulls himself together. It is not becoming for a true gentleman to show his emotions. Inwardly, he is furious and ready to kill Henri for depriving him of catharsis, the pleasure of a lifetime. Outwardly, the man is squeezing the knob of his cane until his fingers crunch. Suddenly, he recognizes Henri. While the guy is happy that he managed to give the wounded man a healing potion, Sened looks at him with fascination. The man asks if the sudden savior's name is Henri, to which he receives an affirmative answer. Sened asks again if he is the same first-level prisoner. Henri answers that yes, something like that. The man finds this fact charming. He stares at the guy without taking his eyes off him. Sened claims that he is actually a fan of Henri. He's the same young man with a failed evasion skill. The man says that he is incredibly curious about what kind of adventurer a guy with such an unusually rare skill can become. Raising his arms up and spreading them out, Sened pompously declares that his life's goal is to raise capable adventurers from the very first level. Therefore, he is a collector of first-level adventurers recognized by everyone and himself. The man says his name is Sened Sullivan, and he apologizes in advance for his tutelary ambitions. Henri thinks that this man is too pushy. The man continues to rant about how if only the boy weren't already in Guillermo's group, he would definitely take Henri under his wing. The hero realizes that Sened probably doesn't know that Guillermo is gone, but he's also the last one who needs to know. Henri decides that he will try not to get involved with this dubious character. He puts the wounded man on his back and says that he is leaving. The man calls out to him, asking him to stop. He asks where Henri is going to take this boy. The hero replies that he was asked to save this adventurer. Senate says that this is no good, you can't just take his comrade away. Henri is hurt by these words. He looks closely at the man and asks what if this guy is his comrade? Why didn't he help him then? At these words, the hero's face distorts with righteous anger. On Sonata, he says that the guy has a simply charming face when he is angry. He tries to explain that this is part of his upbringing, that if you spoil a person, he will not become a strong adventurer. And strictness breeds hopes. The man says that this guy has the skill of mastering magic. Henri thinks that it is really amazing. Magic mastery is a skill required to handle magic. Without it, no magic can be used. Many adventurers have tried to find a way to master this skill, but none have ever been found, which means that this skill can only be inherited from your ancestors. However, there are sometimes adventurers who discover that they have this skill after registering with the church. Senate states that the boy has the skill of mastering weapons, he is strong, and on top of that, he has mastery of magic. That is why the man thinks that this young man will become incredibly strong. And he is now Senate's most promising possession at the moment. And why on earth would some stranger teach him how to raise a protege? Henri gets angry and tells the virtue to go to hell. He asks what kind of raising is that? The hero himself suffered from Guillermo in his time. But at least he had evasion. Henri feels terribly sorry for the poor guy. When he got here, the poor guy was already in a worse state than ever, and if it weren't for the evasion, God knows what would have happened. At this rate, he won't last long. The hero declares that he will return the boy to his younger brother. Sened looks at him with a hard look. His hands are shaking. The man says that this is not right. Sened says he's level 89, and when you get to that level, it becomes very difficult to raise it further. The adventurer goes to dungeons, destroying enemy after enemy day after day, and the level never rises. In such conditions, you inevitably ask yourself whether you have stopped developing. At such moments, memories of the time when your level was low always pop up in your head. It's an incredible feeling of constantly leveling up. There's no other feeling like you're getting stronger, and all Sanad does is satisfy this hunger by raising newcomers. He becomes increasingly gloomy and says that if the hero decides to interfere with this modest joy of his life, he won't even look at the fact that it's Henri. However, before the man can finish his fiery speech, the adventurers are already gone. Here they were, and now there's emptiness and silence all around. Henri runs down the aisle and thinks that Senad is talking nonsense. It's impossible to even listen to him rant. All he does is satisfy his personal desires. He doesn't care about raising adventurers. This guy will become strong someday. Henri won't let Senadu destroy him. Suddenly, a dagger cuts through the air right next to him. Could it really be that the man threw the weapon after him? And then, confirming this guess, Sanad himself materializes out of thin air nearby. In flight, he catches up with the dagger and grabs it by the handle. Henri looks at him in surprise, and Senat only mockingly asks what's the matter. The hero realizes that he seems to have moved to the dagger. But what was that? Was it really teleportation? Senad throws the dagger and it sticks into the roots of a tree. The man notices that Henri seems quite confident in his modest stock of dexterity. He adds that he probably thought he could escape thanks to his speed. Senad arrogantly asks if the hero has forgotten that he is a high-level adventurer. This statement frightens the boy. The man takes out another dagger and says that the very fast rat should be punished. Henri runs desperately, thinking that something will happen now. They are in the very depths of the dungeon. She must be here somewhere. The guy runs as fast as he can. He has to make it. Senad screams that there is no point in running and throws down the dagger. The hero tries to use evasion, but nothing happens. Evasion didn't work. The guy tries to understand what happened, and then he realizes why this happened. Evasion only activates if the one using it is under attack, but the target of this attack was not Henri. Senad threw the dagger into the ground. Suddenly, something unthinkable happens. Henri freezes in the same position in which he ran. His body no longer obeys him. Henri's body completely lost the ability to move and he froze with his hands stretched out forward. Sainiv catches up with the fugitives. But it's too late. The massive doors are closing. The man realizes that the hero seems to have escaped from him to the boss's room. The doors close completely, leaving Senad outside. To avoid clashes between the groups, the entrance to the boss's chambers is closed until those who entered earlier have finished the battle. The man thinks that Henri intends to use the magic circle that is in the room with the reward. This seems ingenious to him. However, Senna doubts that the guy can defeat the boss with a first-level adventurer on his shoulders. The boss inside this room is called Basilisk. Trying to defeat it alone is pure madness. It can only be dealt with by a group of several people where everyone is responsible for their role. The man puts the daggers back in place, arguing that the conversation would have been completely different if there had been someone like him next to Henri. Sanad remembers that the hero did not level up after killing the enemy. Does this mean that he is not level 1 anymore? Or, the man's thoughts are interrupted by the thought that none of this matters anymore. After all, Henri must be dead anyway. From his point of view, it would be foolish to cling to something so unlikely. Saying that there is no need to dwell on the past, Senad pulls out a magic suitcase. Humming a tune, the man slowly rummages around inside it. He sticks his arm in up to his elbow, demanding that someone come out and not run away. Having finally caught someone inside the suitcase, Senad drags it out into the light. This someone turns out to be a rumpled-looking adventuress. She desperately resists and screams that she does not want to fight anymore. While she is trembling, the man takes out another prisoner of the suitcase, who, however, is also not happy to see the mentor. One by one, Senad pulls out low-level adventurers. Apparently, this is his collection. They express different emotions, anger, humility, tears. But they all have in common the unwillingness to be here. The man looks at his charges thoughtfully. The adventurers back away, and Senad, as if nothing had happened, offers to decide who will be his next student. The guy asks what happened to Tito, his previous student. He demands an answer, but the man only remains meaningfully silent. Finally, he answers that Tito has already completed his training, and has become so strong that he is no longer recognizable. The faces of his charges are illuminated by the light of hope. They all say that they should try it too. Maybe they can finish their studies too. Senad happily thinks that this is the attitude he needs. He believes that the students should try hard, and then they will definitely become excellent high-level adventurers. No matter how good their skills are, if they eventually die, they are worse than they were before. Worse than even the most mediocre adventurers. And how are they? Sonata, disappointed. Henri stands in front of the basilisk, still holding the guy on his back. The monster is furious and growling. The hero apologizes and says that they will get through here quickly. Through his oblivion, Tito hears his name being called. The boy opens his eyes and sees his father and brother. He is surprised. Could it be that he was saved? They put together a whole basket of different types of bread for Henri. The man complains that they can't thank him with anything else. After all, the family owns a bakery. The man thanks the hero again for saving his son. The guy passionately replies that he's not worth the gratitude. Tito is tensely silent. Henri is thinking about what to do. He wanted to convince the hapless adventurer to leave Sonata's group once everything settles down. But now he doesn't even know where to start the conversation. Suddenly, the guy himself says that he wants to give up adventuring. Henri is at a loss and asks him if this is a serious intention. After all, Tito has such an unusual skill, mastery of magic. The boy replies that he became an adventurer only to anger his father since they had a falling out over Tito's future. He thought that he could easily make some money through adventurism. But the guy doesn't want to experience anything like that again. After all, to be an adventurer, you need to have a strong determination. Tito says that he is amazed at how Henri managed to fight those monsters with such calm. The hero is silent. The boy turns to his father and says that he will continue his work. Tears come to the man's eyes. He turns to Henri and grabs his hands. The man says that he will never be able to repay this debt. The hero tries to calm him down and says that he did nothing wrong. The happy father declares that he did, and the guy is not like the others. The man explains that he has been watching this city for a long time, and all they do is make fun of the difficulties of other adventurers and use them as an appetizer for their drinks. So if someone like Henri was in the big three, this city would be much better. The guy is shocked by this revelation, and he does not know what to answer. The hero says goodbye to the baker's family. At the end, Henri receives assurance that if he needs bread, he will be served first class in this shop. Tito smiles awkwardly and says that he is, of course, no less afraid of his father than he is of monsters. But he will also try to learn how to bake excellent bread. He thanks Henri again as he leaves. The hero thinks that in order to save Alareth, he needs to become stronger as quickly as possible. But then Henri faces a natural question. Should he turn a blind eye to those in trouble? He quickly comes to the conclusion that no, he shouldn't. There would be no point in power if the price for it was humanity. And Alareth herself would probably be against it. The guy wants to be a brother to her, one she can be proud of when she returns. Henri remembers Sonata. He is not sure if the man understands the gravity of the crimes he has committed. If he has anyone to whom he would like to proudly show his current self. The hero clenches his fists. If Sina doesn't have such a person, then the guy sincerely feels sorry for him. Suddenly, someone runs up from behind, and women's palms cover Henri's eyes. The Joker asks him to guess who she is. The guy answers that she is Aurea. The sorceress asks him, as if in fear, how he guessed. Henri notes that it is obvious. She likes this answer. Aurea smiles and even blushes. The hero thinks that she is behaving strangely. The sorceress clarifies that if the boy needs the Philosopher's Stone, it means he wants to save someone. And that is why he wants to become strong enough to go to the Dungeon X. Henri confirms her guess. The girl looks like she's about to cry. She says that even though it's dangerous, she still wants to ask. What would the hero do if Aurea said that there are rumors in Garabos about a way capable of making him the strongest? Henri and Aurea sit on the bench. The boy tries to figure out what just came over the sorceress. Aurea asks the boy if she can hold his hand. Otherwise, she won't be able to say anything normally. At least that's what it seems to the girl. Henri finds this behavior strange. After all, the sorceress always expressed her opinion without hesitation. However, the boy gives the go-ahead. Aurea puts her hand on top of his and thanks him. The sorceress gathers her courage and admits that what she says next will only be half for Henri's sake. The other half is purely her selfishness. And not just any selfishness. And probably the most selfish thing a girl has ever said. The hero agrees to listen to this. Aurea begins her story and says that today she was at a meeting of the Big Three. The guy asks if there was talk of a tournament to determine the strongest in the Nameless clan. The sorceress answers in the affirmative and adds that the raid boss is literally breathing down her neck. Therefore, it is necessary to decide who will take a place in the Big Three in order to unite the adventurers. The girl tries to add something else, but her voice trembles and her speech breaks off. Plucking up her courage, she asks if the hero himself would like to try it. Henri, astonished, asks again what Aurea is talking about. Was it about taking a place in the Big Three? The girl confirmed that this is exactly what she meant. Aurea explains that a raid boss is a monster that requires the coordinated actions of a huge number of groups to defeat. And if it is defeated, a large amount of experience will be obtained. And also a rare item of SSR rank. But all this will be distributed, depending on the contribution. That is why Henri needs to lead the adventurers into battle as a member of the Big Three. And if the guy really intends to go to Dungeon X, then he will need a certain level for this. And getting a rare item will not be superfluous. The hero asks again about the rare item. Aurea explains that the rarity of the item changes depending on the contribution. That is why the sorceress believes that the guy should join the Big Three to increase this very contribution. Having spoken, Aurea exhales. In conclusion, she says that this is the choice if Henri wants to become stronger. At least, that's what they say. And now the girl is ready to move on to the selfish part. Even if we forget that she is the daughter of the owner of these lands, Aurea still loves this city. As a child, the girl did nothing but read various books about dungeons, what bosses there are and what an adventurer will get for winning. All this literature was incredibly interesting to her. In the books you could learn, for example, about the weaknesses of monsters, or how to get into the dungeon, or about hidden treasures, or about how to get materials for weapons. Aurea was delighted just from reading. In this city, everything in it seemed to be from the pages of those books that captivated her so much. The sorceress simply adores him. When she says these words, she looks truly enchanted. Henri thinks that he understands her. Aurea continues and says that those who have influence in this tournament, this is Sainted, a man with whom something is clearly wrong. There seem to be bad rumors about him. The hero instantly recalls his encounter with this unpleasant high-level adventurer. Then there's Zephyr, who thinks about nothing but becoming stronger. He's the strongest in the Nameless clan. And finally, Habener is a girl who simply goes crazy on the battlefield, and they are all said to be terribly strong. Even if the sorceress had taken part, it is quite possible that all these adventurers would have rolled over her like a steamroller. All strong adventurers have a few quirks, but Oria doesn't want these cruel, selfish people to continue to wreak havoc in the city. The girl says she wants it to be Henri. Her hands are shaking. The sorceress thinks that the guy must be in shock. Well, of course. Yet Oria asks him to take a huge risk, convincing him to take part in this tournament. Suddenly, the guy pulls his hand out of the girl's hand. For the sorceress, this is tantamount to a refusal. She thinks that the hero now thinks that she is some kind of monster. She talks about someone else's egoism, but she herself is no better. But the hero immediately returns his hand. Only this time he places it on top. Orio looks at Henri in amazement. The guy smiles, as if he was not at all scared by what he heard. The hero says that if it makes him strong enough to go to Dungeon X, then he sees no reason to refuse. Besides, the guy himself grew up in a city. He recalls Tito's father's words that the city would be much better if someone like Henri were in the Big Three. However, the hero is not sure that he can cope with what the girl asks him to do. Oria replies that she is sure he can handle it. Henri will definitely handle it. Suddenly, Waldemar appears in front of them. The girl, frightened, grabs Henri. The man notices her as if surprised that the landowner's daughter is also here. Waldemar doesn't understand why the guy is so calm, and the hero just laughs. The man says he thinks he understands, and asks if Henri has really heard it all already. He reminds that he fulfilled his promise and arranged everything. And judging by his face, the guy seems to be already decided. This also sounds like a question, although the determined look of the young man leaves no doubt about Henri's decision. The hero confidently declares that he will take his place in the Big Three.